Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel. Projection System Box. Obtain Spider-Man ability at the beginning. Chapter 61. Leon knew it in his heart, and then suddenly distanced himself from Poppy Dracra. His body quickly retreated from the rear, and in a blink of an eye, he opened a distance of tens of meters with him, and at this distance, the ultra-low temperature could not affect him. Then his eyes shot out two laser beams again. These two laser beams were the thickness of an arm. The energy was not much condensed, and he himself did not intend to use two condensed laser light to penetrate Bobby Drake. What he wanted to do was to confront the laser light and Bobby Drake's ice field. Leon was still secretly shocked by Bobby Drake's powerful ability, knowing that he now has 1/10 of Thanos' skin resistance, although it cannot reach Thanos' almost unbreakable skin resistance, but 1/10 is not weak. But the contact just now, the ultra-low temperature field has made his body a lot of restrictions. Such an ability, no wonder it can threaten the foundation of the entire universe. Coincidentally, Leon's laser eye ability is also an amazing ability, although it is not as terrifying as Poppy Drake's ultra-low temperature field, but his eyes are connected to an alien universe, with the infinite energy of the entire alien universe. Even if Poppy Drake can ignore the laws of matter to create infinite ice anytime and anywhere, directly create infinite matter to shake the foundation of the universe, Leon can also fight him at the energy level. This is also why he chose to project Bobby Drake. He also has bug-level abilities, and he does not necessarily lose against the Iceman Poppy Drake. At this moment, two thick laser beams had bombarded Poppy Drake, but were resisted by his ultra-low temperature field, and the laser beams could only collapse 3 meters in front of him, but could not get close to his body. The two began to stalemate like this. This is Leon's intention. Bobby Drake can indeed create unlimited ice matter, but this also has a premise. The premise is that Bobby Drake has enough energy, the material thing, not as much as he wants to make. Just like a normal person running, there must be a physical limit. Leon found a way, and the way is very simple, that is, to fight with him. He does not believe that with his current energy, he can't fight Bobby Drake. The arm-thick laser beam has been hovering 3 meters in front of Bobby Drake. Without the slightest closer, the energy that escapes turns into a shock wave, directly lifting a large area of the ground of the two, high temperature and ice, so that one side of the two sides becomes ice, and the other side turns into scorched earth. Leon is now in a blade state. Red light flashes on scarlet eyes, and the light has been exporting energy without the slightest slack. Bobby Drake stretched out his hands, and from his palms there was a faint chill, which was the root of counteracting the laser beam. Time passed minute by minute, and in the blink of an eye, more than 10 minutes passed. Leon has maintained the output of the laser beam, and on the other side, Bobby Drake is also very tacitly exporting the ultra-low temperature field, and now a large area of ice has accumulated under his feet in front of him, and even his body is connected to the ice under his feet, and the place where the ice cube is located happens to be the shape of a shock wave. On the other side, the energy dissipated by the laser beam shot by Leon also happened to burn the ground into a semicircular shape, the same as the shape of a shock wave, and the two did not move for half a day, and each other was exporting energy and matter, as if it was fixed. On the ground, Leon suddenly increased the energy output. The laser beam in his eyes suddenly shrunk in a circle, the energy condensed, and Poppy Drake over there suddenly took 2 steps back, and the two laser beams also approached his body by 2 meters. But Bobby Drake was not without action. He quickly increased the output of the cold aura, and then gradually forced the laser beam back. Leon grinned, and then increased the energy output again, and at the same time condensed and tightened the laser beam again, and Bobby Drake over there retreated again, and the energy beam approached him again. But Bobby Drake will naturally resist, and has no choice but to increase the output again. The rhythm is completely controlled by Leon, and he falls into a passive defense situation. "I'm going to have to play with you today." Leon thought so, and suddenly increased the output, and Poppy Drake could only follow him to increase the output as well. Leon is not afraid of stalemate at all. His eyes are connected to a different space universe, backed by wireless energy, which can be squandered by him, and Bobby Drake wants to export the ice field. The energy to expend is obviously stronger than him, and his physical fitness is even more incomparable to Poppy Drake, so as long as the two are in a stalemate, then the final defeat will only be Bobby Drake. Time passed like this, and in the blink of an eye, more than 2 hours, the laser beam emitted by Leon's eyes had approached half a meter in front of Bobby Drake. And under Leon's pressure, Bobby Drake can only try his best to resist, because the initiative of the fight between the two has been completely mastered by Leon. Leon increases the energy output, then Bobby Drake has to fight, because if he is a little sluggish, then his body will be shattered again, then he may not even have the opportunity to fight back. The laser beam bursting out of Leon's eyes has now become as thin as a cigarette. Thinning means that the energy is more concentrated, and the destructive power is more terrifying, and Bobby Drake's resistance is also more and more forceful. Tens of meters behind him are occupied by cold ice, and those cold ice even because of the strong energy aftermath, and a mountain tens of meters high gathered behind him, showing a projectile shape. And the ground around Leon has turned into a large area of scorched earth, and even green smoke, clusters of flames are mixed in it, and Bobby Drake is completely two extremes. The two have been competing like this for hours, not to mention Bobby Drake. Even Leon now feels a little weak in energy, such a continuous explosive energy output, even he is almost overwhelmed. But he believes that Bobby Drake must be more uncomfortable than him, and you can see it by looking at his current state. At this time, although Bobby Drake's body is still in a cold and ice state, his body surface has some signs of melting, and there are water droplets that have fallen. You must know that he is a representative of low temperature. In the ultra-low temperature field, he can freeze all existence, but in the competition with Leon's ability, his body temperature has now increased. It can only be said that Leon caused his body to disintegrate from the root, and what belonged to the origin suffered some damage. Leon naturally saw this, although he felt very tired, but the victory was already in sight, and he had to continue to persevere even if he was tired. He is now a little glad that the method he chose from the beginning is right. If it is another method, even if he breaks Bobby Drake's body countless times, he can recover again, and the metal attack under the control of magnetic force is also a physical attack, and it will not have a big effect on the Iceman Bobby Drake. Only a pure energy attack method like a laser beam can cause real damage to Bobby Drake. Time was still passing, and Leon's energy output did not stop, but increased the output in the following time, while reducing the laser beam to the thickness of a toothpick, which is basically the maximum that Leon can do now. To this extent, Leon's double is completely occupied by red light, and two laser beams shoot out from the red light, which looks very thin, and this thinness carries shock and destructive power. Looking at Bobby Drake's side, the laser beam was already attached to his double. The ultra-low temperature field seemed to have lost its effect at this time. His hands turned red from touching the bundle, and gradually increased the temperature over time. As a cold ice, the result of his elevated body temperature is melting, which is a natural and direct result, so at this time, water has already melted from his hands, and the ground in front of him can no longer be condensed. Leon's blade-shaped face now showed a sinister smile, and he knew very well that he had won. As he expected, Bobby Drake can only adapt to his rhythm to resist now, and cannot move directly to dodge. The origin of his body has been damaged, and his own energy has lost too much, and now he can obviously only barely defend, and has no energy to do anything else. If he has wisdom, then he will definitely not choose such a way of resistance, and if he has wisdom, it will definitely be extremely painful in this situation, but without wisdom he will not experience pain, so he will continue to resist very rigidly. In the blink of an eye, another 5 minutes passed. Suddenly clicked, his hands broke from the wrist, and then his broken palm was directly shattered by the laser beam, turned into a pool of water stains and fell to the ground, and then the laser beam hit his chest directly, instantly, and immediately knocked out 2 holes in his chest, and what came out of the hole was not ice crystals, but water stains. It's now. Leon smiled viciously, and the laser beam that burst out of his eyes suddenly thickened, covering Bobby Drake's upper body at once, and the scorching and furious energy impact acted on him. The next moment, Bobby Drake's upper body was directly shattered, melting quickly while shattering, while Leon swept his eyes back and forth, and the laser beam also moved with his line of sight, capturing those ice crystals that were not completely melted in midair. Then he moved his gaze down and shattered Bobby Drake's lower body, melting it into a water stain in the same way. Burst. A large pool of water stains fell to the ground, and Leon's smile grew brighter when he saw this scene, and he only had one thought now. It's done. Sure enough, in the next moment, a box appeared where Bobby Drake disappeared. Bobby Drake died. The red light in Leon's eyes was small, the laser beam dissipated, and then he fell to the ground with his whole body forward, completely weak. He also spent a huge amount of energy in this fight, and if Bobby Drake didn't die, he wouldn't actually be able to last long. But fortunately, the result is gratifying, the winner is him, and he can also reap the rewards. Leon breathed violently, had already detached from the blade state, the whole person seemed to be out of strength, and now he didn't want to move anything, not even his fingers moved. It was the most strenuous battle ever. Leon laughed at himself. This is indeed the most laborious battle he has experienced so far, not very thrilling, but it has consumed the most energy. He lay on his stomach for more than 10 seconds, slowed down slightly, and then stood up and came to the box, and after opening the box, he saw that there was a grid inside, and there were 4 cards in the grid. Drip, congratulations to the host for hitting the Iceman and obtaining the Iceman ability fragment *4. 4 Iceman ability cards, is the harvest this time. Leon does not feel less, because of the particularity of the Iceman ability, even if there are only 4 ability fragment cards, it is an excellent harvest. He took out the card, the box disappeared, the grid inside automatically appeared on the system light curtain, and the next moment, he was also kicked out of the projection space. In an instant, he felt that the soreness in his whole body had disappeared, and the feeling of exertion had disappeared, which was very magical, and Leon completely felt that he had returned to his peak state. Yes, the damage suffered in the projection space does not bring back to the real world, so the energy consumed in the projection space is the same. Leon immediately became happy, twisted his neck, and then slapped an Iceman ability card on his body. The next moment, just like the feeling of using the ability card in the past, it took less than 2 minutes to digest this ability card, and Leon only felt refreshed. He used the remaining 3 Iceman ability cards in succession, and then hurriedly called up the system light curtain to check it. Host, Leon. Abilities, 113% Spiderman ability, 149% saber-toothed tiger ability, alien symbiote deadly blade, growing 179% Magneto ability, 193% Scott Summers ability, bloodline transfiguration, Thanos skin resistance 1/10, 27% Iceman ability. Number of projections, 0. You can shadow twice a day. Closing parenthesis. Good value, 2,461,796. Kill value, 8,386,835. 27% of the Iceman's ability can only create a cold ice field with a temperature of only 27% of the Iceman, or is it 27% of the Iceman's ability to use it? Leon decides to test his newfound abilities, and he is now in a laboratory that he set up to build the arc reactor, although not as small as some large laboratories but still small and equipped with all the organs. He came to an empty room and took a special thermometer by the way, which is an electronic thermometer, and the lowest temperature that can be detected is about -190 C, which is definitely a very amazing temperature, and the general space temperature is about -230 C. As soon as Leon's mind moved, the body began to change, this change from the inside out, he clearly felt the changes in the body, the organs disappeared, or became another form of existence, and then the body became hard, but the joints everywhere could move freely, which was a very magical experience, and he couldn't say why. Then this change appeared on the surface of the body. If there was someone else at this time, he would see that his body turned into ice cubes, and the whole person became an ice sculpture-like existence, and he himself lowered his head and carefully looked at his body. The body really turned into ice cubes, or the kind of ice cubes with very high transparency, and even the clothes on the body were frozen and shattered, shaking the body slightly, and the fragments of the clothes on the body fell directly to the ground. Then, he was naked, and the little brother actually became an ice sculpture, and the harmonious Iceman state in the movie did not exist at all. Sure enough, the movies are all lies. Leon looked at a mirror on the wall and found that his irrelevance had become inconspicuous, but his vision, hearing and taste were still there, even the sense of touch on his body, but his body had turned into ice cubes, which was a very magical feeling. He took the thermometer and saw the temperature on it. -76.3 C ideographic period. A low temperature that is basically rare in Earth's nature, but this temperature represents warmth in the universe. This temperature is his current body temperature, but strangely he does not feel the feeling of cold at all, but feels a warmth. This warmth comes from the outside world, that is to say, the temperature of the outside makes him feel warm. He held the thermometer in one hand, and began to spew cold gas into the thermometer with the other, and saw the foggy cold air sprayed on the thermometer, but the value on the thermometer did not change significantly. Leon came to the conclusion that his current Iceman ability is the percentage of the Iceman's control temperature, which means that the low temperature he can now produce is at most 27% of the Iceman. In this way, a few more projections, then you can master the ability to create absolute zero temperatures. Leon is still quite satisfied. This ability seems to be of little use for the time being, but when all the abilities of the Iceman are obtained, it will be very terrifying. Leon recovered from the state of the Iceman, and then the whole body was red fruit. No way, the clothes were frozen into pieces by the low temperature just now, and he had to find out the underwear again. He cleaned up a little in the lab and drove to his company. Leon Technologies, whose headquarters is located in the Broadway neighborhood of Manhattan, rents a floor in an office building, and now the company is small but everything is in order, and the production plant is in the suburbs, and now everything is on track. I have to say that his plan at the beginning was very correct. Things are left to capable people to do, he only needs to take care of the overall situation. As soon as he entered the company gate, the beautiful front desk saw him and immediately smiled at him. "Good afternoon, Mr. Stacy." Quote, "Don't be surprised, greeting people who are not familiar with foreign relations is like this, just like Chinese people greet Mr. Li and Mr. Wang to each other, only when the relationship reaches a certain point can you directly call other people's names. Hello Debbie, you look beautiful today." Leon smiled and nodded. "Really, sir?" Debbie was pleasantly surprised. The man in front of her, but the red man in the eyes of those investors on Wall Street, the high-efficiency battery technology in his hands, someone valued him at $3 billion, and I don't know how many capitalists want to contact him for this period of time, but no one has ever succeeded. Such a man, still so young, is completely the fantasy target of any woman of the right age. Debbie is one of them. She has only been in the company for a few days, and a large part of the reason is because of the man in front of her, but unfortunately she and Leon have not met several times. Of course, if you go to a nightclub, you will definitely be the prey of all the men present. Leon said with a smile. "Would the gentleman be willing to go to a nightclub with me in the evening?" Debbie looked forward to it. Leon shrugged and said, "I'm sorry Debbie, I have an appointment in the evening." Quote. Saying that, he smiled and went in, leaving Debbie looking at his back in a daze, with a pitying look on her face. How Leon didn't know this woman's mind, but unfortunately his vision is very high now, thinking that Debbie is such a brightly dressed urban beauty without much connotation, which is completely not among his goals, not to mention that he is not willing to eat nest grass, which is too tasteless. There were many workstations in the office area, many of which were still empty, and there were only a dozen people in the office area dealing with the work at hand, so he went directly to the other office area without disturbing, knocked on the door of one of the offices, and then opened it directly. "Hi Gwen, what are you up to?" "Push the door and enter." Gwen was really wearing a work suit to work, raised his head when he heard this, raised the frame of his glasses, and said angrily, "You are finally willing to appear. I am now white. Why did I promise to come over to help you that day?" Quote, "Haha, I'm your brother, shouldn't my sister help my brother?" Leon came to her and sat down on her desk. "Oh my god, my favorite major is biology, but you let me manage finances. Are you sure this is a job I can do? Why not find a few more professional finance people? I know you have a lot of money on your hands right now." Quote. Gwen closed her laptop, and at the same time took off her glasses and rubbed her eyes. She had been so fulfilled these days, to the point of exhaustion. "No way, who let you study accounting?" Leon shrugged. "I learned it from my mother, and I almost forgot about it." Gwen punched him. "Haha, okay, the real reason is that I can't find someone to worry about for the time being. You know, the only thing I can think of about money is you have to help me, don't you?" Leon sold miserably. Gwen rolled her eyes and ignored him. Leon added, "What about the Morse people?" Quote, "Morse is the professional manager he has found, and his ability is very good, but he is still in his inspection period. I went to the factory, and he decided to start 10 production lines and is supervising over there." Gwen Dow. "Okay, so that means nothing happens to me for the time being, right?" Fac, obviously you are the boss, why are you the most idle one? Gwen glared at him. Leon had a way to deal with her, directly grabbed her little head, kissed her on the forehead, and said, "I love you, the little princess of the Stacy family. My brother's favorite is you. Can you bear to watch my brother work all day?" Quote. Somehow, Gwen suddenly had a dry mouth, subconsciously wiped his forehead as before, and looked up to see his bright eyes, but somehow did not dare to look at him. Stay away from me, you will always find all kinds of reasons, and I have already seen that you will definitely be a big capitalist in the future. The worst kind, Gwen snorted. Well, let's end the topic, now that time is running out, we have to find a place to have a night, how about going to a movie after eating? Since you were 12, you have been reluctant to go out to the movies alone with me, you don't know how sad I am, don't you love me? Leon continued with a cheeky face. As a quasi-capitalist who is about to surge in wealth, his biggest concern now is the company's accounts, and he is not at ease with others, so he has to trap Gwen in the company for a while so that he can distract himself from his own affairs. Gwen looked at him and snorted angrily, but he didn't refuse. Leon chose a very good high-end restaurant, had a good meal with Gwen, and then ran to the cinema to watch a movie, and both of them were very relaxed the whole time, completely putting their work aside. Gwen naturally wanted to go back in the evening, and Leon was also away from home for some days, just planned to go back. After watching the movie, the two drove directly home. George and Helen were very happy for Leon to come back, but Leon could see the exhaustion under George's smile. What's wrong, George? Is it that things are not going well at work? Leon asked. Gwen also looked at George, and she also saw that something was wrong. George looked at Gwen, then nodded slightly. It's really a work thing. Well, maybe I should ask you. Quote. Gwen, I need to ask you something. I hope you don't get excited when you hear it. George said. Gwen didn't know why, but his premonition told her that it wouldn't be a good thing, so he said, you ask. Quote. How did you and Peter do during this time? George asked. Gwen shrugged and said, I didn't intend to tell you, but I actually broke up with Peter, which was the other day. Quote. Leon interjected, did something happen to Peter Parker? Quote. He hadn't seen Peter Parker since that time, counting the days. George frowned slightly, and then nodded. He is missing, he has been missing for more than 4 days. Quote. What? Gwen stood up at once. It's true that she broke up with Peter Parker, but that doesn't mean she doesn't care about Peter, even as a friend, she is nervous to hear that he is missing. Did you find him? Gwen asked. The question is obviously redundant, and if found, George would not have said that Peter Parker had been missing for 4 days. Sure enough, George shook his head, and then said, his uncle and aunt reported the case, and then this case was known. I mobilized some police forces to look for it, but found no clues. You can try to contact him. Quote. Gwen nodded and hurriedly took out her mobile phone to dial, but the phone was never answered, and after a long time, she reluctantly put it down and said, I can't contact him either. Quote. In this way, Peter Parker may be in danger. George said. Gwen looked at Leon with a hint of begging in her eyes. How Leon didn't know what she thought, she could only shrug her shoulders. Okay, I'll help find a way to find it, you don't have to worry first, after all, he is not an ordinary person. Quote. What? As a police officer, George naturally sensed the deep meaning of Leon's words, so he asked, you said that Peter Parker is not an ordinary person, can you tell me that he is not ordinary? Quote. Gwen glared at Leon at this time, obviously a little reproachful, but still took the stubble and said, he is indeed not an ordinary person. Quote. George said, children, are you hiding something from us? Quote. Let me tell you. Leon glanced at Gwen, and then said directly, he is actually Spiderman. Quote. Really? George was surprised, but not too shocked. After all, when Leon told them his true identity before, they were already shocked, and George asked, in this case, could Peter's disappearance have something to do with some kind of supernatural affairs? Quote. It's hard to say, but now it seems that unless he takes the initiative himself, he will not disappear, and Peter has lost news without telling his family, then he must be in trouble, and this trouble is most likely related to some supernatural affairs. Leon said and patted Gwen on the shoulder, and then said to George, maybe the search for Spider-Man Peter Parker should be left to someone else. Quote. Who? George asked. Of course it's S.H.I.E.L.D., they're better at this. Leon then said. Okay, George, you let this matter go first, I'll contact the people of S.H.I.E.L.D., whether I can find Peter Parker depends on the ability of S.H.I.E.L.D. Quote. He said a few words of comfort to Gwen and went upstairs, then took out the phone and dialed the number, which was quickly connected. Man, if you don't give me a reason, I'll block you right away. The person on the other side of the phone said a little angrily, and his voice seemed to be a little breathless. Leon said directly, Tony, there is one thing I have to inform you. The little spider is missing. Maybe you should ask Nick Fury to find a way to find out. If the little spider dies, you will have one less reserve force. Quote. When was it? Tony Stark scolded. It's been almost a week since you disappeared. Don't you SHIELD know the whereabouts of every superpower? Why is it so late to know about the little spider? Leon asked. Fark, I am a director of SHIELD, not their agent. These things are not my business. I will inform Nick Fury. Tony Stark said. Well, give me news as soon as possible. I don't want my sister to worry. Leon said. Oh yes, he's boyfriend with your sister. That was before they broke up. Leon rolled his eyes. SHIELD still had this information. Okay, I'm busy now. I'm going to hang up your phone first. Leon said. Okay, but listening to your voice is a little breathless. Are you not feeling well? Are you still exercising at this time? Well, take care of your body. After all, you are not young. Quote. Fact, I'm fine. Tony Stark hung up the phone directly, and Leon shook his head and turned to see Gwen at the door of his room. Don't worry, someone has already dealt with this matter. I think there will be a clue soon. I will notify you when there is news. Now all you have to do is relax yourself, go take a shower, and then sleep beautifully. Peter Parker's disappearance is an accident. Leon recalled the plot he watched in his previous life, but he never found a memory of this incident. Then it can only show one problem, that is, there is no such plot in the original Marvel book. It seems that my little butterfly's wings are fanning a little fiercely. Leon thought so. Gwen nodded and looked at Leon with some desire to speak. Leon stepped forward and hugged her into his arms, knowing that the woman was not safe at this time, and was a little worried about Peter Parker's safety, so he patted her on the back and said, Don't worry, everything has me. Peter is not so prone to life danger, we just need to find him. Quote. I know, I want to thank you for pampering me so much since I was a child. I know that I am not a good girl, I am too willful. Quote. When Gwen is by Leon's side, he will feel at ease, and then subconsciously say the words in his heart. Leon smiled and said, Don't think about it, although you were a little willful, but it doesn't matter, this side is only for the family. You have always been a kind girl to others. Let's just say that now, the ex-boyfriend is in danger, you don't care the same, right? Quote. Leon patted her head and said, Go and rest, just leave this matter to me. Quote. Gwen raised his head, his eyes shining brightly looking at Leon, and Leon smiled at her and kissed her on the door of the head, and inexplicably gave birth to a feeling that his own cabbage had grown up, which was very gratifying. Gwen went to rest, and George was quickly notified by the bureau that the special department had intervened in the case, and Leon went down to talk to him for a while, explained the matter clearly, and then let George and Helen go to rest, and he also relaxed, washed and went to rest. After a night of silence, he received a call from Tony Stark the next morning. We got some clues, Tony Stark said directly. Leon said, Tell me about it. Quote. That little spider last appeared 5 days ago, in the Broadway neighborhood, still doing his volunteer police work. Oh yes, that day he also rescued a dog, helped someone pick up a shoe hanging on a tree. God knows why the shoe hung on the tree, and hid a robbery. He directly knocked the robber unconscious. The robber was a beautiful girl, but unfortunately he didn't leave a call. If it was me, I would definitely ask the girl to go to the hotel once. Leon listened with black lines all over his head and scolded, Pick up the main thing for me, I don't want to listen to your nonsense here. Quote. Well, you guy doesn't know anything about life either. Leon wanted to hang up the phone. The other side was a chatterbox, but thought about it and put up with it. Then Tony Stark continued. 5 days ago, around the evening, there was a large-scale power outage in the south area of Manhattan Island, New York, although the process was only a second, but according to the investigation, there was no damage to any power facilities, so that short power outage must be caused by some kind of movement. Quote. Leon listened quietly and did not fight, and Tony Stark continued. If he hadn't suffered some kind of energy attack, then the fluctuation that caused the short pause must have been because of his appearance. Quote. So, 9 times out of 10, he's dead? Leon asked. As far as the conclusion is concerned, the probability of this has reached 80%. and you also know that the guy is very dedicated, and now there are people on the internet who have begun to pay attention to the situation that the little spider has not appeared in the past few days. Tony Stark said. Leon's brows furrowed when he heard this. This is not good news for him. He would never have thought that Peter Parker's guy would actually be in danger of his life, although it cannot be proved now, but as far as the information he has now, he is very likely to hang up. Did you find where he disappeared? Leon asked. Oh, speaking of this, we really found that in an alley in the south side of Manhattan, there was a trace of an explosion, and a 3-meter diameter pit appeared on the ground, showing a tearing suit, not a general impact, more like a tear under some kind of energy disorder. If the little spider encountered this situation, it is likely that the bones will be gone. Tony Stark said. Poor little spider. Leon shook his head helplessly. Well, it's too early to draw this conclusion. It is also possible that the spider has encountered a strange phenomenon, maybe he is still alive. But there is something on the SHIELD side that you need to do, and I hope you can agree to it. Tony Stark said again. Leon hung up the phone directly. He didn't want to have too much involvement with SHIELD, otherwise his free life would definitely be affected. After a few clicks, the phone rang. Leon cut it, then it rang again, it broke again, and then it rang again. After doing this several times, Leon finally sighed and picked up. Why hang me up? Tony Stark said angrily. Say, what's going on? First of all, I have the right to refuse. Leon said directly. Okay, how about going to the EU police for a few days? As Spider-Man, quote. Not interested, Leon said and was about to hang up again. $3 million. I'm not short of money. Leon refused this time very hard. I heard that you started a company, and the production is still high-efficiency batteries, right? How about I let the company purchase a batch? Quote. How much do you want? Leon asked. Place an order for you for $50 million. Leon was slightly silent for a moment, and then said, yes, but I will only do it for 3 days at most. Quote. No, 5 days. Then there is nothing to talk about. Leon said. Okay, 3 days is 3 days. All evil money ISM, all evil rich people. In this case, Leon also has to say a real fragrance. In fact, Leon also knows why Tony Stark placed an order to his company. The reason is no other, it is because his company's products have outstanding performance, which is something that directly crushes similar products. Even Stark Industries attaches great importance to it, and even in the 2 days when Leon's products came out, Stark Industries has already launched an acquisition intention for them, but Leon refused. Leon is clear about one thing, that is, Tony Stark must have paid attention to Leon Technology, a new company. He needed to make the company famous in a short period of time, and Stark Industries was undoubtedly a good opportunity. Then it's settled. Today you let people pity the people of my company, let's sign the purchase contract as soon as possible. Leon said. Don't worry, I will do what I promised you, but you have to start working today. Tony Stark said. Leon sneered. Don't play tricks with me, man, you are a businessman, I am also a businessman now. If I don't receive a notice from the company before tomorrow, then you can find someone else. Quote. Don't be so tough, we are also comrades in arms. Tony Stark said. He attaches great importance to Leon, not only because of Leon's terrifying combat ability, but also because of the company he is now in his hands. He is a genius and a businessman, and he knows the value of this. But we are talking as businessmen now, comrades in arms or something, let's put it aside. Leon smiled lightly. Okay, you guy is always so reasonable, I promise you, by tomorrow I will definitely put the contract of 50 million order money in your hands. Now, trouble you to put on Spider-Man's clothes and go outside to look good. Tony Stark said. Is it so urgent? Leon was a little puzzled. Of course, the disappearance of the little spider is nothing to ordinary people, but New York is not so peaceful. His disappearance falls in the eyes of people with intentions, those criminals and the like, will become fearless, will have a certain impact on the security of New York. Tony Stark said and then said, I know what you want to say, although SHIELD is powerful, it is not omnipotent, and it is impossible to take into account the security of the entire New York City. After all, it is a matter that the police should care about. Another point is that Little Spider has done very well in the past 2 years, and he has become a symbol of justice in New York City, so at this time, you need to use Spider-Man's identity to deter some villains and let them know that New York still has Spider-Man. Quote. It makes sense. I was speechless. Leon sighed. That's it. Let's start your work quickly. I will let the TV station report your whereabouts today through the relationship, and it can be regarded as the aftermath of the little spider. Tony Stark said. Okay, Leon said and hung up the phone directly, and then took out a Spider-Man suit from the grid of the system's light curtain, which was the reward he received after projecting Spider-Man for the first time. I didn't expect that one day, I would be able to use this thing. Leon thought it was magical. He changed into a Spider-Man suit and went downstairs directly. Downstairs in the living room, George was studying the case file on the sofa, heard the voice, looked up, and saw a Spider-Man standing in front of him. Leon, it's me, I'm going out. Leon said. You are? George was puzzled. Spider-Man is missing. New York's security problems will definitely be highlighted. No way, at this time I have to stand up and help you share a little, so that those criminals know that the New York vigilante is still there. Leon said. George thought for a while and then said, also, the crime rate in New York has shown signs of rising in the past 2 days, and the appearance of Spider-Man at this time will definitely deter some people. Quote. He got up and patted Leon's shoulder and said, then you have to pay attention to safety, don't let me and your mother worry. Quote. I will. Leon hugged him, waved his hand and went straight out. On the way, he also called and spoke to Gwen, telling her to be patient. His side had already found concern to investigate, and did not tell her the truth of the matter. At this time he still had to hide it. He hasn't used Spider-Man's ability for a while, but now he is not what he used to be, and his ability is not known how many times stronger, swinging around tall buildings with spider silk, and his figure appears more fast and gentle. At this time, Leon was crouching on the roof of the Empire State Building, overlooking the entire Manhattan area, and with his visual ability, he could easily see everyone on the street under his feet. Now, it's time to get to work. Leon jumped down from the tall building, the free fall on his head and feet, and suddenly shot out a spider silk when he was still 10 meters off the ground, sticking to the tall building not far away, and then the body then fell with the power and swung directly towards the distance. Oh my god, that's Spider-Man. Wow, it's Spider-Man. Quote. I'm lucky to see Spider-Man today. People who saw Leon's figure on the street let out a burst of exclamations, and Leon also deliberately chose to fly low in the air in order for passers-by to see him. In this way, he wandered the city all day, fighting criminals in the darkest alleys, helping others in public, perfectly mimicking the day of Peter Parker's vigilante. Not to mention, he had the heart to do these things in a good way, but the situation changed at night. When Leon is wandering outside, he saw the Spider-Woman Gwen. When he tried to approach her, Spider-Woman Gwen looked very guarded, and after seeing him come over, she directly put up a defensive posture, and I had the intention of kicking your crotch if you took a step closer. Leon frowned and stopped. Okay, don't make trouble, now, quickly tell me, why are you here? Quote. Looking at his serious look, Spider-Woman Gwen was very sure that the other party knew herself, otherwise it would be impossible to talk to him in this tone, but she was still very guarded, and said at the same time, you recognize the wrong person, I am not your sister, so tell you, I am not from this world. Quote. What? The joke is not funny. Leon shook his head with a serious look. But it's true, and I don't know why, but I'm not from this world. Spider-Woman Gwen affirmed. Leon stopped, looked at her tightly, and then asked, is your father's name George Stacy? Is the mother Helen Stacy? Do you have an older brother named Leon Stacy? Quote. Now it was Spider-Woman's turn to be serious, and she said, my father is indeed George Stacy, and my mother is also Helen Stacy you said, but I don't have an older brother, I have 2 younger brothers, Walt and Malmo, how do you know this? Quote. Leon looked at her carefully, pretending to be unsure, are you really not my sister? Quote. Really, is your sister just like me? Spider-Woman Gwen asked. Leon nodded, and then said, no, it should be said that you look exactly like my sister. Quote. Then in this way, I can be sure of one thing, I am not your sister, this is true, and the world here and I am in should be 2 different parallel universes, but I don't know why I am here. Spider-Woman Gwen said. Leon took out his mobile phone from his backpack behind his back, then brought up the family photo and handed it to her. You can see first, there are pictures of my father and mother and sister. Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen looked over, and then also looked surprised. This is indeed not my world. I have been here for almost 5 days. I have been observing here. When I learned that there is a Spider-Man here, I was very surprised, because that Spider-Man's ability is exactly the same as mine, so I hid and wanted to wait for Spider-Man to appear. Quote. Leon nodded and said with a clear look, can you tell me how you got here? Quote. I don't know. Spider-Woman Gwen shook her head, and then added, I was fighting with Dr. Octopus in an alley. He created an artificial sun, and then because of that person's energy instability, the energy torrent after the explosion swept me into it, and by the time I woke up, I was already here. Alleys, battles, explosions, torrents of energy. These keywords immediately made Leon associate, and Tony Stark's words in the morning, and because of these 4 keywords were connected, Leon roughly understood the reason why she came to this world. It should be Dr. Octopus's artificial sun. The violent energy fluctuations generated open a time gap, thus involving her in reaching this world, and in the same position coordinates of this world, the energy aftermath is vented, just rolling Peter Parker passing by, and the two come to cross each other. In this way, Peter Parker probably did not die, and then traveled to another world. Leon suddenly remembered something and asked, is there a person named Peter Parker in your world? Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen nodded and said, yes, he's my best friend. Quote. So is he dead? Leon asked. Why do you ask that? Of course he is still alive. Quote. In this way, the plot of Gwen's world is not in line with what Leon knows, and now he has some headaches. Well, I believe what you said, because my Spider-Man here is missing. Leon shrugged. What, so you're not Spider-Man? Spider-Woman Gwen was surprised. Leon nodded and said, yes, I am not Spider-Man, the Spider-Man of this world is Peter Parker. Quote. At the same time, he shrugged his shoulders and said, you came to this world, and unfortunately, Peter Parker was swept into your world by the energy waves caused by your crossing at the same time and place. Quote. He told her some clues he knew, and after listening to it, Spider-Woman Gwen was a little silent, and then said, since you are not Spider-Man, then who are you? Why do you act as Spider-Man? Quote. Leon patted his head and said brainlessly, I was pulled to work, I have already said, I am your brother, my name is Rain Stacy, well, I am the brother of Gwen Stacy in this world, the kind without blood relation, I was adopted by George and Helen when I was a child. Quote. He and Gwen the Spider-Woman explain their identities, which is also to gain each other's trust. Spider-Woman Gwen was silent after listening, sat down next to the rooftop, looked at the night view of the city, and said, have you been bitten by a spider too? Quote. Leon was stunned, and then smiled, yes, I was also bitten by a spider before. Quote. Can I trust you then? She suddenly turned around and asked. Leon looked into her eyes seriously and said, although you don't know me, you look exactly like my sister, in my opinion, you are my sister, and you can naturally trust me. Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen shrugged his look, then got up and came to him and stretched out her hand. So, can you give me $500? Quote. Do what? Leon asked subconsciously. Open a room, take a bath, eat, rest. Leon was a little speechless, but still said, come with me, I will arrange these things. Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen nodded and said, by the way, I also want to ask you something, since you are not Spider-Man, then why do you use the identity of Spider-Man to act? Quote. The reason for this is a bit much, so explain it to you. Leon explained the reason, and then said, although you are not a person in this world, you should also know that the security problem in New York has never been effectively solved. That is, when Peter Parker was there, he could deter some people with intentions, and now that he is missing, some chaos will come out, and I can only promise others to come out for a few days. Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen nodded. She was also aware of the security problems in New York, and would choose to come out to do justice after she had the ability. The two went down the tall building together, and then Leon led her to a pedestrian street. He changed his clothes in an alley, but saw where Gwen the Spider-Woman was still standing, so he asked, didn't you change your clothes? Quote. Do you look at me like this, like I have a change of clothes? Spider-Woman Gwen didn't have a good airway. Listening to this tone and attitude, if it weren't for the wrong hairstyle and temperament, Leon really thought that the girl in front of him was his sister, and he reached out to pat her on the head, but was dodged by the latter. "What are you going to do?" Saying that, he looked at him a little warily. "Ahem, it's convenient, I treat you as my sister again, then you wait here first, I'll go get you a dress." Leon said and left, and Gwen the Spider-Woman looked at his back, a hint of strangeness flashed in her eyes. Is what this guy said true or false? Is his sister like me? Gotta find a chance to check it out. Quote. Leon, on the other hand, went to a clothing store, chose a few sets of beautiful clothes, even bought a few sets of underwear, spent thousands of dollars, and then came to the alley with a large bag and a small bag, but there was no Spider-Woman Gwen. Huh, won't leave, right? Leon scratched his head a little. When I really thought so, a strong wind suddenly hit the back of my head, measured my head slightly, and a stone flew past my ear, and then I heard the voice of Gwen the Spider-Woman, "I'm here." Quote. Leon turned his head and saw Gwen the Spider-Woman hiding on the roof of a small 5-story building. He jumped up a few times, handed her the things in his hand, and said, "Yes, these are all bought for you." Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen took it, opened one of the bags, inside was a very fashionable sweatshirt, she put it directly on her body, nodded and said, "It fits, thank you." Quote. Leon said, "Let's go then." Quote. As he prepared to go down, he saw Gwen the Spider-Woman's silent words. "What's wrong?" Gwen the Spider-Woman looked at the bags on the ground. Okay, you shouldn't use this face to appear in front of me, I really owe you guys." What he said about owing you naturally included his sister Gwen. "Thank you." Seeing Leon lift the bag again, Spider-Woman Gwen was a little embarrassed. Leon gave her a blank look, then took her to a high-end hotel, opened a suite with her own documents, and the first thing Spider-Woman Gwen did after entering the room was to run into the bathroom with her clothes in her hands. She came to this world for several days, and also wandered outside for several days, for no other reason, no money on her, it was difficult to walk anywhere, if it were not for robbing a few evil people, maybe she would have starved to death. As a woman who also loves beauty, it is really difficult for her not to bathe for several days. Leon sat down on the sofa outside, turned on the TV and watched. It took Gwen Spider-Woman almost an hour to take a shower before she packed up and walked out wearing the clothes that Leon bought. Leon turned his head to see that Gwen the Spider-Woman came out refreshed, wearing a sweatshirt on the upper body, tights on the lower body, and a pair of canvas shoes, with a good figure, but at this time she was looking at him strangely. "What's wrong? Why are you looking at me like that? Is there something on my face?" Leon touched his face, a little unsure. "How do you know my size?" Spider-Woman Gwen said and tugged at the clothes on her chest. Ahem. Leon coughed and said a little strangely, "Don't talk about size. I know my preferences and temperament, although you and my sister are two different individuals, but I think there must be the same place between the two of you. I bought her a lot of things, clothes, shoes, accessories, perfume, food, use, play. In addition, I bathed with her for several years, although I have not grown up, but the girl's favorite thing to do every time is to jump on my bed in underwear, I am too familiar." Quote. After Leon finished speaking, it was the Spider-Woman Gwen's turn to cough dryly. Ahem, let's end this topic. I want to ask you, is there a way to send me back? Leon shook his head and said, "I'm sorry, I don't know how you came over, I don't understand the principle, for the time being, there is definitely no way. By the way, do you want to meet my parents in this world with me? It's your home too." Quote. Forget it, I don't know how to face the other self. Spider-Woman Gwen shook her head. Well, I don't force you on this, but since you are Gwen Stacy and you are still in this world, then I am your brother, you can't refute this, so you have to listen to my arrangement for the time being. Leon said. Spider-Woman Gwen thought for a moment, then nodded and said, "Yes, but I need to continue to do justice." Quote. No need for this, I'll come forward for the time being. No, that's my belief. Leon stared at her, are you serious? Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen nodded. Leon suddenly had a headache. Think about it, Spider-Woman Gwen's temperament, and that Peter Parker is no different. After gaining ability, he becomes more and more firm in his belief in his ability to help others. How can people with such beliefs easily give up this? Okay, but from now on, you need to listen to me, otherwise I will lock you up. Leon said seriously. Why, I have nothing to do with you. Spider-Woman said. I'm your brother, no matter what world you are, this can't be changed. Leon directly blocked her words and said, it's so decided, you can't resist, and you can't resist me. In addition, tomorrow I will bring you a certificate, you can use my sister's certificate for the time being. Quote. He planned to give her a copy of Gwen Stacy's documents. After all, in modern society, without these documents, sometimes it becomes very troublesome. Okay then. Spider-Woman Gwen bit her lower lip and somewhat reluctantly agreed. Leon nodded with satisfaction. Then it's decided, you rest first, I will also live here tonight, you can rest at ease, rest assured that with me, there will be no danger here. Quote. Leon was a little worried about this girl, even if he already knew the identity and origin of this girl, as long as she still held Gwen's face, he couldn't let it go. There is no other reason, as an older brother, his own cabbage must be watched. Okay, night. Spider-Woman Gwen went back to the room. She is still a little unsettled. The reason is naturally in Leon. After all, it is not a person in this world. It is a little strange, and I don't know if I can return to the original world, so even if it has been several days, it still can't completely calm down. This night she thought a lot, thinking about her family, friends, and some things about the world, and she thought more about whether she could go back. After all, this is not her home. Thinking about it, she slept in a daze, and I don't know why. I slept very comfortably tonight. Maybe it was the relationship that someone around me was guarding, and when I woke up, it was already the next morning. She was more awakened by the hunger in her belly, rubbed her sleepy eyes, and then she smelled the smell of food, and also heard the subtle movement outside the room. When she got up and opened the door, she saw Leon placing some food on the table, and the smell was coming from the table. Don't say why she can smell food in the room. No way, she is also Spider-Man, with the same Spider-Man ability, but with a keen sense of smell. Go wash up and come over for dinner, Leon said and took another wad of toiletries from a bag and handed it to her, who nodded, quickly packed himself up and sat down at the dining table, eating without saying anything. Leon looked at her gobbling up, and now she was no different from her sister, and her every move was like her. Eat slowly, I know your food consumption, you with Spider-Man ability. The amount of food itself is beyond ordinary people, so I prepared a serving of 5. Leon said with a smile. Spider-Woman Gwen nodded, her mouth full of food, and there was no time to deal with him for a moment. Phew, finally came to life. Quote, after drinking a large cup of milk, Spider-Woman Gwen breathed a long sigh of relief, and the whole person was much more comfortable. By the way, didn't you eat breakfast? Spider-Woman asked suddenly. She had already eaten all 5 servings on the table. I've eaten, Leon said, pulling another cell phone from his pocket and handing it to her. You take this, my number has been stored in it, and there are these, driver's license and identity card, this is a bank card, there are $50,000 in it, which is temporarily enough for your flowers. Leon put the things in front of her in the same way, and suddenly patted his head and thought of something. I also rented an apartment for you here, this is the key. Temporarily rented for 3 years, it is your current foothold. Quote. In addition, you just turned 18 this year, right, you are still in high school, it should be a senior year of high school, I will find someone to arrange a school for you, and I will enroll in the name of Gwen Stacy. You are still a child, I respect your idea of sticking to your beliefs, but you must also obey my arrangement, which you promised me yesterday, and then you need to know one thing. Even if you are not from this world, but you still have family in this world, understand? Quote. Spider-Man Gwen looked at the things on the table in front of him, a little silent, and said for a long time, why are you so nice to me? Quote. Leon subconsciously reached out and rubbed her head, rubbing her silky hair, which was his favorite thing to do to Gwen, and this time, Spider-Woman Gwen did not dodge. What nonsense, I'm your brother, Leon said, but we are not related by blood, and we only met for the first time yesterday. Spider-Woman whispered. Leon rolled his eyes, and then said, family is family, what's wrong with just meeting? It is my responsibility to take care of you, otherwise I can leave you alone to wander outside. Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen suddenly got up after being silent for a long time, can you stand up for a moment? Quote. Leon stood up inexplicably, what's wrong? Quote. Gwen the Spider-Woman suddenly threw herself into his arms, and then cried. Hi girl, why are you crying? Leon hurriedly patted her back and asked. Thank you. Don't say such stupid things. Spider-Woman Gwen this is really open to Leon, but also from the bottom of her heart to accept him, although she has outstanding ability, but she is also very strong, but she is still a girl who has just come of age, she has been wandering here alone, flustered for several days, and now a family member who thinks about her everywhere has appeared, which undoubtedly calmed her somewhat flustered heart a lot. Leon also sensed her emotions at this time, so he comforted her softly. Whether you are a person in this world or not, whether you have other experiences, and whether there is another you in this world, you are Gwen Stacy, my family, that's all. Quote. Gwen the Spider-Woman nodded, sniffed, and then looked up from his arms with red eyes, and saw Leon bow his head towards her, seemingly wanting to kiss her. She subconsciously hurriedly ran away from Leon's arms, and then wiped her face indiscriminately, with a little blush on her face, but asked seriously, what do you want to do? Are you a sister controller? Quote. Hell's sister. Leon was half angry by her words, and said angrily, I just want to kiss your forehead and give you some comfort, what are you thinking about? Quote. Poor God, Leon was really pure in mind just now, and was trying to kiss his sister, but was despised by this girl. Hug, sorry, I'm still a little unused to it, after all, you also know that in my family, there is no such existence as an older brother, especially, you were just a stranger to me before that. Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen was a little unnatural, touched her cheek and said something about him. Leon rolled his eyes, stepped forward directly to support her body, and then very domineeringly touched her forehead with his lips, and then said, I am your family, you must get familiar with this as soon as possible. Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen's body was a little stiff, feeling the breath on Leon's body, and her cheeks were a little red. Okay, I'll try. Her mind was a little confused at this time, as she said, Leon was just a stranger to her before this, even if she accepted him in her heart, but after all, the two are not so familiar, a man who has only known him wants to kiss himself, any normal woman will subconsciously refuse, especially a girl like her who has not yet had emotional experience. That's right, clean up, I'll take you out to shop first, you don't have to worry about whether you can go back, I will find someone to think of a way, if you can, I will send you back, if not, then stay here at ease, you will always figure it out. Leon let go of her with a smile on his face. Spider-Woman Gwen nodded, now it seems that this is the only way, she has no other way. As for Leon's previous arrangement, she did not object, here she is not familiar, even if she is already an adult, but not strong enough to face the world alone, now just with Leon's help, just made him feel a lot more at ease. Then you wait for me first. Gwen said and went to clean up, took a few minutes to change, and then came out and said, let's go then, take me around casually. Quote. Leon saw that she was still wearing that suit under her coat, so he asked, don't you wash that dress? Quote. No, this is high-tech material, just flush it a little if it's dirty. Okay. The two came out of the hotel together, and after coming to the parking lot, she saw Leon's sports car, and asked with a strange face, are you rich? Quote. Leon was stunned, and then said with a smile, it's okay, I recently opened a technology company, the potential is not bad, and I have some money in my hand for the time being. Quote. Okay. The two got into the car, and Leon drove her around the city, introducing her to some things here, such as attractions and landmarks, and some entertainment facilities. From time to time, Gwen the Spider-Woman would answer two sentences, saying that I also have this over there, this I don't have over there, I've seen this thing, and so on. Leon didn't plan to do anything else during the day today, so he decided to take his sister to familiarize himself with the situation here first, so as not to make her feel insecure. Along the way, the two were chatting idly, and gradually the Spider-Woman Gwen also opened her heart to him, and the whole person looked a lot more cheerful, chatting with him with a smile. At noon, the two had a meal together, and after the meal, Leon drove her to a place again. Why did you bring me here? She asked. The two stood in a car dealership, commonly known as the Four Sons shop. Of course, I will get you a car first, tomorrow I will start to arrange your schooling, you can't delay your studies, I can't let you take the bus to school, right? Leon said. Shouldn't you take public transportation? Spider-Woman Gwen asked. Leon flicked a bullet on her head, you promised me that you would listen to me. Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen was already a little accustomed to Leon's intimate movements from time to time, but just bit her lip and said, "Aside from the ability on my body, I am just an ordinary person. In my world, I walk to school." Quote. Leon smiled and said, "So you have to adapt to me, who let me spoil that sister of my own." Quote. Well, she's lucky. Spider-Woman Gwen didn't know why she said such a thing, and she regretted it a little after saying it. Leon was stunned, and then rubbed her hair and said, "We are very lucky for each other to meet across different universes, and you should know what a small chance this will be." Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen also smiled and said, "You're going to spoil me like this?" Quote. No, compared to my family's Gwen, you are pure and simply a little sheep. You must know that the girl is a crazy girl. Since I was a child, it has given me a headache. I dream of a well-behaved sister like you. Alas, I'm afraid it's not a sister control attribute attack, some can't help it. Leon laughed to himself. Gwen the Spider-Woman hurriedly took a step back and looked at him strangely. Ha ha ha, just kidding, I'm not a sister. Buying a car in the Fourth Son's store, there was no pretense to punch the face. Which one is stupid in business this year? One by one, the shopping guide enthusiastically pounced on his father and brought tea and water, and Leon did not hesitate much, so he chose a car for Gwen the Spider-Woman. He didn't buy any luxury car for Spider-Woman Gwen, that is, an ordinary car with a price of $30,000, because there was a car, and the two of them drove a car and left after picking it up. Spider-Woman Gwen naturally knows how to drive. After all, there are too many similarities between the two worlds. She is also a person with a driver's license, followed Leon left and right, and soon came to an apartment building. Leon led her upstairs and opened one of the doors, which was a very exquisite suite with all kinds of things. Okay, you live here for the time being. First familiarize yourself with the environment and rest by the way. I'll come over in the evening, and then we'll go out together. Leon explained. Okay. Spider-Woman Gwen is as good as the flow. She has accepted Leon. There is no resistance to these arrangements. On the contrary, there is a faint warmth in her heart, and it feels really good to have a brother who knows the cold and the heat to pet it. Even if this brother only met yesterday, this did not prevent her from developing good senses for Leon. After Leon left, he went directly to the laboratory, and then his own scientific research plan, saying that scientific research is not accurate, is actually a high-end version of a high-efficiency battery with 10 times the capacity to get out. Of course, there are 6 times, 7 times, 8 times and so on. The company wants to make money, and now it is the main product, and he is ready to start the next stage and start the incubation of artificial intelligence, but this thing is too expensive, and it is estimated that it cannot be obtained without 1 or 200 million. There is no other reason. Artificial intelligence is very computational. Ordinary computers cannot meet this, so if you want to build real artificial intelligence, you must have a supercomputer. How difficult the supercomputer is, how expensive it is not to say. In short, that thing is piled up with money. Although the company is developing well, it is only just getting started, and the expenses that can be provided for him are still limited. Fortunately, today has received a report from Morse Rog. Stark Industries' order has been placed, and the order money has been directly credited to the account, and the subsidiary has a large input, which makes him very happy. The afternoon passed quickly. Leon got out of the busyness. Such a life is very fulfilling, usually doing what interests him. It is rare to be lucky, so this strengthens his determination not to participate in other forces. Nothing is more important than freedom. At dusk, Leon went to Gwen the Spider-Woman. The two cleaned up a little, and then went out together. Leon is purely accompanying Spider-Gwen to play soy sauce today. Since the female Gwen likes this kind of life, he also expressed support, but as a sister controller pseudo, it is necessary to ensure her safety, so he plans to follow all the time. Hey, I say, shouldn't you act on your own? Are you going to follow me like this all the time? Spider-Woman said. The two have been wandering in the city for more than half an hour, during which they encountered a robbery. Yes, just one. In this case it is already few. The United States, the beacon of human civilization, New York, a world metropolis, a place that flaunts cooking and freedom, but there are crimes happening all the time. This is not an exaggeration, but many crimes are hidden in the shadows. Of course, you can't leave my sight in this state, so I can't have a girl from another world, and I must ensure your safety. Leon rightfully said. If it weren't for the mask covering Gwen the Spider-Woman's face, she would have rolled her eyes at Leon now and let him admire the whites of his eyes. I need freedom, Spider-Woman said helplessly. Sorry, freedom can't be given to you right now. The reason why Leon wanted to do this was actually because he wanted to see what she was doing. But you're like this, I'm stressed. Spider-Woman Gwen crossed her hands at her waist. Leon shrugged and grabbed her shoulders. You should think differently, this is also the beginning of our familiarity with each other, isn't it? Quote. Please, you don't have to use this method to get acquainted with each other. She was still a little unused to it. It was good to suddenly have an older brother, and this brother was fine, but it was too good to make her feel pressured. Just as Leon was about to say something more, a siren suddenly sounded on the street below, and in just a few seconds, several sirens were heard from a distance. The two put aside their arguments, and at the same time came to the rooftop to check and look, and saw that there were several police cars on the street below, quickly rushing in one direction. The two looked at each other and nodded, then jumped off the roof at the same time, and then used the same method to shoot Spider Silk in that direction. I have to say that the movements of the two are very synchronized and appear to be full of tacit understanding. Looks like something big has happened, Spider-Woman Gwen said. It shouldn't be wrong, this place, there is no moment where people can relax. Leon said the policing situation in New York City is full of slots. You have to get used to that. Spider-Woman Gwen is in a good mood. More and more police cars, gradually gathering together, quickly rushing in one direction, obviously something important happening somewhere ahead. Leon became a little puzzled, while Spider-Woman Gwen was much more serious. Leon felt this atmosphere, and said in a half-year voice, You are not allowed to make a rash move for a while, you must listen to my arrangement. Quote. No, I have my freedom, you can't restrict me like this. Spider-Woman Gwen naturally does not want to be dominated by him, she has her own insistence. Obedient girl, don't make me angry, otherwise I will really lock you up. Leon threatened. The Spider-Woman over there Gwen didn't speak again, obviously not wanting to catch up. Leon secretly cursed, how can this little Neezy be stubborn and exactly the same as Gwen's girl? Can two people with the same identity in different worlds still have so many commonalities? He wanted to curse at this moment, but he endured it. The two followed the police car and came to this side of Manhattan in a short time. Basically every time there is a major disaster or something happens in New York, it basically starts here, which is really regular. Look, what's over there? Spider-Woman Gwen exclaimed. Leon looked back at this time, and saw a scarlet humanoid monster on the street in the distance, raging on the street. The passing vehicles were easily overturned by him, even torn apart with his bare hands, and some people were torn apart by its claws. The scene was very chaotic and bloody. Leon's brow under the hood frowned, he already recognized this thing. Slaughter. It is indeed a massacre, scarlet appearance, miserable white double pass shadow, and a big mouth that seems to be torn open, as well as sharp teeth and scarlet tongue in the mouth, all of which reveal its identity. It is the evil and violent symbiote, Slaughter. Be careful, that thing is dangerous, Leon said to Gwen the Spider-Woman. You know that thing? Spider-Woman Gwen asked suspiciously. I don't know, but I can feel its power. You don't shoot. Leon said again. No, it's doing the crime, we should stop it. Gwen the Spider-Woman obviously didn't want to wait like this, and she didn't want to see a criminal commit murder in front of her, let alone slaughter such a murderous existence, which had already killed several people in this short span. So after she said it, she swung directly towards the place where the slaughter was. Leon secretly cursed that he had seen the hell, and quickly followed. He is still very concerned about Spider-Woman Gwen. After all, he is a sister from another world, and he wants to feel the love from his sister in another world. How the hell could this thing be here? Since it's here, what about Venom? Leon was puzzled. The slaughter suddenly looked up as if conscious, and after the person came, he raised his head and yelled at the two, and then he picked up a car next to him and threw it directly at the two. Well, it's not small. Leon was a little surprised. Just as he was about to remind Spider-Woman Gwen, he saw her hand pull slightly, her body rose a little, and she stepped on the car that flew over and jumped directly, while Leon was much more direct, flying up and kicking the car aside. Stop. Spider-Woman Gwen landed on the ground, and without thinking about it, she shot 2 strands of spider silk at her. But she obviously underestimated the ability to slaughter, and the claws on one hand suddenly extended, and when she saw a flash of cold light, 2 spider silks were cut off. Such a speed and the sharpness of the claws were amazing. Spider-Woman was not surprised, and obviously did not think that her 2 spider silks could subdue it, and then rushed directly forward, while kicking towards the face of the slaughter. This stupid girl is too impulsive, and she will suffer a big loss. Leon did not rush to join the battle group, and naturally he was not afraid of this monster, because with his current combat strength, he can be completely slaughtered, and he also has to let the Spider-Woman Gwen suffer some losses, and the disobedient sister is not cute at all. Gwen the Spider-Woman's kick was easily resisted by the slaughter, and she also pinched her ankle by her hand, and then threw it out and smashed it on the window on the side. He climbed up in the embarrassed hiding window, bent over, and although he couldn't see his expression, he must be in pain now. But she didn't say a word, and launched several spider silks in a row, and at the moment the spider silk shot out, she also rushed out. Gee, Leon had a headache, thinking that this girl was really iron-headed, and she was not afraid of kowtowing and breaking the blood. The two soon became entangled. Spider-Woman Gwen's agility is very strong, coupled with the spider induction she still has, can always allow her to dodge when the other party's attack comes, but no matter how the scene looks like she is suppressed, it looks dangerous. Because the agility of the slaughter is not weak at all, the mouth is wide open and roared, and the sharp teeth in the mouth are as terrifying as serrations. Kill you, kill you. The laughter of the massacre is very evil. In just 2 minutes, neither side could help the other, but Spider-Woman Gwen was always suppressed, and the longer the time dragged on, the more unfavorable it was for her. Leon watched closely on the side, did not rashly check, just waited for anything wrong. He was the first to catch up and organize. It's also time to make this girl suffer a little, to let her know that people in society can't just rely on their blood. Leon didn't think too much. The rhythm of the scene has been completely controlled by the slaughter. Every time it attacks, the hands or a certain part of the body will change, turning into a variety of sharp weapons. People can't be prevented. If it weren't for the Spider-Woman Gwen's very fast speed, he would have died a long time ago. Spider-Woman Gwen's attack was once again fruitless, seeing the slaughter raise his hand to fight back, and when he was about to retreat, he suddenly slipped under his feet, but he stepped on a stone at some point, and the whole person fell crooked to the side. Not good. She was shocked, because at this moment, the slaughtered hand had fallen, and long nails grew on her 5 fingers, stabbing down her chest like a blade. Shocked, she struggled to twist her body to dodge the blow, but no matter how hard she tried, she was always shrouded in the attack. What to do? At this time, a hand stretched out from the side and directly clasped the wrist of the massacre, and then this hand was like an iron tongue, firmly restricting the movement of the massacre. At this time, can you stop? Leon asked politely about the slaughter. The massacre is completely representative of chaos and fury. He has wisdom and thought, but his mind is only used to kill. He will taste the pleasure of killing, and sink into it, and everyone who stands in his way will be torn apart by him one by one. At least that's what he thinks himself. At this moment, on the street here, the surrounding has already been surrounded by police cars and police, originally planned to shoot, but after seeing Spider-Woman Gwen and the massacre battle, he wisely chose to wait and see, and now when he saw Spider-Man, he relaxed a lot. At least they knew that with Spider-Man appearing, someone could finally stop the monster. As expected, Spider-Man restrained the monster's movements with just one hand. Roar! The slaughter roared, the other arm flicked, with a thick wind sound towards Leon's head. This slap contains a huge force. If the average person is hit by such a force, the result is basically to take needles and thread to sew up the body, or the kind of death. Leon's eyes flashed fiercely, but unfortunately the slaughter could not be seen, and he also stretched out a hand and held his wrist at a faster speed, and his fingers were fiercely clasped into his flesh. The symbiote has no flesh and skin, so flesh and skin are just a saying, and Leon suddenly holds his 2 arms, thus forming a situation of wrestling with him. You go to the side first, and then you can't help here. Leon even had time to explain this to Gwen the Spider-Woman. Spider-Woman Gwen was not carried away by justice, and the few minutes of the exchange just now had made her clearly recognize the gap between him and this monster, and when she heard this, she said, "Then you be careful." Quote. Saying that, she stepped aside and carefully guarded. She was not stupid, she knew that she could not do anything, it was brain-dead behavior. Leon nodded and did not speak, fiercely clasped the arm of the Slaughter. The strength of the body and the strength of the Slaughter were competing, and the two gradually froze. The power of the Slaughter was very strong, very powerful. Leon estimated that its strength had exceeded 200 tons, which was much stronger than his previous blade state, but now he blocked it with his own strength. Because he has Thanos skin resistance, although the main role is on the skin, but it also greatly increases his physique, and his strength also increases a lot, so for a while, he will not be slaughtered and suppressed in terms of strength. Roar! The Slaughter suddenly roared at Leon, and then jerked his hands up, and Leon suddenly flew up uncontrollably. This is no way, the Slaughter is more than 2 meters tall, and it looks extremely strong. Leon's height of more than 1 meter and 8 points, in front of him is like a child. His own strength is terrifying, but the weight is also terrifying. If he wrestles, he can fight with it, but the other party is so flung that he has to fly out. This is a law of physics that cannot be avoided. Leon was slaughtered and slammed into a wall, and with a boom, the wall shattered, the earth and rocks flew over, and he was already deeply trapped in it. Ah! Spider-Woman, Gwen exclaimed, subconsciously about to step forward to help, but the next moment saw Leon suddenly raised a kick, fiercely on the face of the Slaughter. The huge force directly dented the face of the Slaughter, and the Slaughter was also directly kicked out by this kick, knocking over several police cars. The policemen suddenly panicked, and someone shouted, "Hurry up and disperse the guard, this guy is too terrible, let's see if Spider-Man can deal with him." Quote. The crowd soon dispersed, and the Slaughter was like Leon, smashed into the wall, and fell deep in it, and at this time Leon got up from the wall, and when he came out, he broke off a steel bar. The steel bar became longer and thinner in his hand, the edges became sharp, and in a blink of an eye, it became cold and shining. Leon doesn't want to expose his abilities too much, after all, he still plays the identity of Spider-Man, so to deal with the Slaughter, he has to use some secret means. "How are you? Is there a hand?" Spider-Woman Gwen asked, wanting to step forward. Leon waved his hand and said, "I'm fine, you just don't move there, I'll be able to cook him soon, let's go to supper." Quote. As soon as the words fell, the others had rushed out, and at the same time, the Slaughter on the opposite side also roared and struggled out of the wall. Seeing Leon rushing, one hand stretched forward, and it turned into a long machete, which appeared extremely sharp and cut down towards Leon. In a place that no one could see, the long blade in Leon's hand was covered with a layer of black and red color, which was very light and only a thin layer. Whoosh! The scimitar cut through the air, and Leon dodged in a pinch, leaning over and rushing forward with the blade, while the long blade in his hand flashed a strange arc and cut through the crook of the Slaughter's arm. His speed was so fast that before the Slaughter could react at all, the arm that he turned into a machete had already detached from his body. Roar! Maybe it was pain, or anger, and the massacre roared one after another. Leon cut out this knife the moment he staggered with him. Dazzling people can't see clearly, but the massacre is aware of something wrong, and roared, "Who are you? You are not them. Are you my kind?" Quote. Leon turned sharply, and the long blade in his hand once again cut a strange arc, this time pointing directly at his head. The other hand of the Slaughter then instantly turned into a huge scimitar, raised in an instant, blocking Leon's blow, and at the same time, the arm that had just been cut off by Leon suddenly shot out several thin red lines, connected with his broken arm, and the latter two were so healed together, it was completely impossible to see where there was any injury. "I'm going to tear you apart." Chapter 71. Dang! Leon is holding a metal long blade in his hand, but it is wrapped in a layer of symbiote substance, and the Slaughter is a blade transformed by pure symbiote, and under the two hits, it makes a sound close to the exchange, which is very strange. "If you have the guts, you will come." Leon's voice was cold. He didn't plan to tremble with this guy, he wanted to solve him as quickly as possible, so when the other party blocked his knife, he kicked out again, his body moved up 3 points against common sense, and he kicked the other party's face. Poof! Under a muffled sound, the slaughtered head exploded directly like a watermelon. How powerful Leon's strength was, and such a force deliberately hit a point, and the effect was even more terrifying. But the Slaughter is an alien symbiote, or the most outstanding of them, naturally will not die because of such a result. His body shook, and several silk threads suddenly flew out between his neck, connecting with those flying symbiote substances, and the broken head was restored again in a blink of an eye. "Need help?" Spider-Woman Gwen saw the difficulty of this thing in front of her, so she asked out loud. No, protect yourself, and keep people around you away from here, because it will become dangerous right away. Leon said loudly. Okay. Knowing that she couldn't intervene in this situation, Gwen came to the police and told them to leave. The police are naturally reluctant to leave. Their task is to maintain law and order problems, but now as long as they are discerning people, they can see how terrifying the monster is, and it is rare that Spider-Man can compete with it, in order not to affect Spider-Man's play, so they decided to pull the cordon farther away. In this way, there is enough room for Leon and Carnage for them to toss. Leon didn't say much when he saw this. He wanted almost that, as long as no one came up to get in the way. The Slaughter found Leon's difficulty, and at this time the voice was sharp. Get out of my face, Spider-Man, otherwise, I will be serious about you. Quote. It seems like you were paddling just now, but you really want to show me. Leon's business is very bad. In short, the attitude is very bad. You asked for it. After the massacre said this, he roared the next moment, and then the whole body swelled in a circle, and the symbiote substance on his body turned into various weapons, and from a distance, he looked like he was full of various weapons. This is your whole card. You are now like a porcupine. Quote. Leon's ridicule completely angered him, and the next moment he killed him like a hedgehog rushed towards him. The various weapons on his body were extremely sharp, and the ground along the way was cut out of the trail. Seeing this, Leon did not have the slightest feeling, and the next moment his counterattack arrived. Whoosh! With two soft sounds, two spider silks with red and black colors opened up in midair, directly forming a large web, covering the Slaughter in it and directly blocking his steps. You really are my kind. Hee hee, I must tear you apart today. The Slaughter was cruel and didn't care that he was trapped. Leon rushed forward at this time, the thin blade in his hand waved, and it was instantly swung by him to form a knife web, and the cobwebs left traces on the Slaughter. Not enough, not enough. The Slaughter naturally will not sit still, even if the spider silk that binds his body is extremely tough. He struggles to break it. No matter how many times he is cut by Leon, he will let his body hurt, and he will fight against Leon with his injuries. Bang! The massacre punched out, but three long knives condensed from the fist, cutting with sharp blades, with a sharp sound of wind. Leon's eyes were cold, and his strong reaction force allowed him to dodge this punch in an instant, and then he turned the knife in his palm, and cut off most of his palm along the trajectory of the Slaughter punch. Is that enough? Man, it looks like you're going to die here today. Quote. Leon even took the moment to glance at Gwen the Spider-Woman, who was now watching him nervously. Whoosh! With a flash of sword, Leon cut it horizontally, cutting off all the deformed weapons on the arm of the Slaughter, and then dodged the blow of the Slaughter, and cut half of his head by the way. At this time, he saw Leon tossing and turning. His figure was like a swift tanuki, often dodging between the Slaughter attacks, and his body did not touch the Slaughter at all. He didn't want to expose too much now, but it was such a means of evasion, and it was enough to dazzle. Poof! Under the sound of sharp blades entering the flesh, the Slaughter completely became a live target, as if it was being played by Leon, and it was completely beaten. The Slaughter roared again and again, and he couldn't tear Leon alive, but Leon's speed was too fast. He didn't have the slightest way to take it, and in just a few faces, his body was already scarred. Are you just going to dodge? The Carnage roared. You care about me, anyway, as long as I can get you, aren't you angry? You want to kill me, but you can't help me, and now I really want to see your expression. Quote. What Leon said was actually to see the expression of the person who slaughtered the fit, that is, the murderer Cletus Cassi, and as for the massacre itself, he was not very interested. The Slaughter fought back again, but Leon did not give him a chance, once again cut off the head of the Slaughter, and then grabbed his head with one hand, and carried his body with the other, and rushed directly into a nearby alley. The symbiote substance in Leon's hand was still struggling, and even on his head, there was a scarlet substance along his body to connect with his body, but Leon didn't care about this, and ran like an alley at an extremely fast speed, directly turning into the innermost. Whoops! Leon directly ripped off the substance that climbed on his body, and then carried the head in front of him and said, Aren't you very puzzled? Why did I bring you here? Quote. Slaughter's head was still struggling, trying to change shape, but by this time, Leon's hands and arms had turned black and red, and a similar substance was wrapped around his head, making him unable to break free at all. The head of the slaughter was still shouting, and he didn't seem to know his current situation, as if he was always so angry and not afraid of death at all. It seems that you haven't seen the situation clearly. Leon also had to sigh when he saw him like this. The existence of losing his mind and killing is indeed both sad and terrible, and sadly Cletus Kasai has lost one of the most basic minds as a human being, and the terrible thing is that he has no mind and is completely hidden in the desire to kill. Such people are pure, evil pure. But meeting Leon is also his sadness, because the end is already predetermined. Say goodbye to the world. Leon's voice was cold. Even if the massacre took the opportunity to kill, after hearing this, he couldn't help but be surprised, and when he wanted to make a sound, his eyes were already occupied by a red light. Ah! The slaughter screamed, and the matter on that head was immediately distorted, because Leon's laser beam shone on his head, and the laser beam was a high-energy and high-heat existence, which happened to be the nemesis of the slaughter of this type of symbiote. Where the laser beam touched, the symbiote material fled rapidly, revealing the original appearance of Cletus Kasai, who was not killed now because of the protection of the symbiote substance, but the pain was real. The current slaughter is his temporary life support, but if the slaughter is removed from his body, then he will be killed instantly, but he does not know this. But now the massacre symbiote material is evading the laser beam, so that his head is directly exposed, but the pain of being burned by the beam is real, and he is too keenly aware that his life force is rapidly draining. Nope, no, quote, Cletus Kasai howled miserably, but his face did not change. He had already removed his hood at this time. His face was suddenly stunned, his brows were slightly frowned, and the laser that burst out of his eyes was much thicker, wrapping his entire head. The massacre symbiote substance boiled at this moment, emitting a scream that did not resemble a human voice, and then quickly flowed from Cletus Kasai's head like water, wanting to quickly break away. Under the blow of this intensity, without the protection of the massacre symbiote material, Cletus Kasai's head naturally could not hold on, and the vitality quickly disappeared, and even the entire head melted and dissipated like spring snow, and his screams also stopped abruptly. Go ahead. A pool of scarlet liquid fell to the ground, and then quickly fused with the substance on Cletus Kasai's body, and then broke away from his body, surging to escape elsewhere. But Leon will not let it escape. His mind moved, a direct break of an iron staircase beside him, flying out, and this iron staircase decomposed at a very fast speed in midair, and in a blink of an eye, it turned into grains of iron sand, and then these iron sand penetrated into the pool of scarlet liquid. I'll see where you can run. Leon sneered, and the iron sand had suddenly wrapped the scarlet liquid, forming a brilliant silver metal ball, and inside the ball, the metal automatically split into a grid, splitting it into several parts. Leon can feel the slaughter struggling inside, but this strength is very weak. After the symbiote and the creature symbiosis, it is a complete individual, and now, its ability is not much different from an ordinary pool of water. And in this state, the symbiote simply does not survive long. As soon as Leon's mind moved, another piece peeled off the iron stairs behind him, and it also decomposed into iron sand, and then these iron sand penetrated into a hole in the corner, and a mouse came out a few seconds later. The mouse was rolled into the metal ball by iron sand, and then unexpectedly, there was no choice in slaughter, and it was directly symbiotic with the mouse, and suddenly the mouse's size grew several times, and now it is as big as a small dog, and its strength is growing rapidly. Leon sneered, and countless spikes suddenly protruded from the inside of the metal ball, inserting them into every place on the mouse's body, directly making it into a near-death state. Be honest with me, otherwise, I'll burn you directly. The slaughter obviously heard these words, and the body surface of the rat, which was still boiling, quickly quieted. Leon then moved his mind, summoned the system light curtain, and tried to put the metal ball into one of the compartments, but he didn't expect to really succeed. After thinking about it, he understood that this grid had originally stored symbiote larvae, indicating that it could survive itself, and it was not an accident that a controlled life was stored in it. Find a time to study this symbiote and see if you can find something from it. As Leon was thinking this, there were footsteps outside the alley, but it was Gwen the Spider-Woman who ran in. Are you all right? She worried. I'm fine, don't worry. Leon said. Is this the person? She saw the headless corpse on the ground. Yes. What about his head? Spider-Woman Gwen asked again. Ran. Leon lied directly. There are some things that Gwen Spider-Woman still can't know for the time being. Ran away. Spider-Woman Gwen apparently didn't believe it. Leon asked, haven't you encountered such creatures in your world? Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen knew that he was talking about an existence like the one he had just slaughtered, so she shook her head and said, I haven't seen such an existence before. Quote. Okay, then I'll explain to you. This thing is an alien life form. A single individual cannot survive, must live in symbiosis with other creatures. In the symbiotic state, this creature is very powerful, often surprisingly powerful, and its own ability is also very strange. Its own material can become a variety of weapons exist, this you just saw. But this thing is afraid of sound and fire, and this weakness is also obvious. Leon explained the concept of symbiote to her. Spider-Woman Gwen listened quietly and did not interject. After Leon finished explaining, someone ran in outside, but it was several policemen. What's going on here, Mr. Spider-Man? The man in the lead asked. As you can see, it was a monster. It swept this guy's head. I didn't catch it, let it run. Leon shrugged helplessly. The police immediately stepped forward to check the body. Leon nodded at Gwen the Spider-Woman. The policemen were now focused on the corpse, and the leader looked at it and said, Mr. Spider-Man, and this lady, we need you to go back with us to help in the investigation. The policeman said and looked up, but now there were still Leon and Gwen the Spider-Woman in the alley, and the two directly slipped away. Remember that if you encounter this kind of thing in the future, don't fight hard, you must outwit it. The two arrived at the roof of a tall building in less than a minute, and Leon had to explain it again at this time. Spider-Woman Gwen nodded and said, I remembered. Quote. So what do we do next? She asked again. Let's go back first. If there is such a thing, let's avoid the limelight first. Leon said. Okay, listen to you. The two also knew that this happened today, and it was not good to continue, so they were ready to return directly. Just at this time the phone in Leon's backpack rang. He took out the phone and looked at it, and immediately wanted to hang up. But after thinking about it, he answered the phone anyway. What's going on? His tone was a bit blunt. Hey man, are you still out there now? Tony Stark sounded on the phone. Leon's brows frowned slightly. Every time he came to this guy, there was nothing good to do. He didn't want to get involved with this guy too much. Yes, what's wrong? Ask. Then can you tell me who the woman you were with? Your girlfriend, Tony Stark asked again. What woman? There are no women around me. Leon's heart moved, but he still denied it. Okay man, don't hide it from me. You know my identity. It's very simple to know some news. Tony Stark said again. Leon was slightly silent, and then said, what do you want to ask? Quote. Tell me the identity of that woman. Is she in our camp? Tony Stark asked persistently. As a member of the Deep Bureau, he needed to know these things. You shield is really annoying. Leon expressed contempt for this gang of people who had nothing to do after they had enough to eat, but he also knew that Gwen the Spider-Woman's identity could not be hidden. After all, if someone wanted to check, it would be easy to find out something. Well, she's my sister, what's your opinion? Leon said coldly. How is that possible? Isn't your sister an ordinary person? Tony Stark said in shock. The reason for this is a bit troublesome to explain, so I'll talk to you in person at a time. This kind of thing can't be hidden. Leon didn't force it. As long as Spider-Woman Gwen is here one day, then it will take one more day to use the identity of his sister Gwen. It just so happens that Leon also needs Tony's help with something, so he doesn't mind leaking the news in advance. Okay, you come to my house now. Tony Stark said. Yes, then you wait. Leon hung up the phone, and then said to Gwen the Spider-Woman, it seems that our time to go back has to be delayed, we have to go somewhere else first. Quote. Where? Is that person's home on the phone? Quote. With Spider-Woman Gwen's hearing ability, she could naturally clearly hear the conversation between the two just now, and Leon nodded and said, do you know Tony Stark? Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen said, of course I know, in my world, there is Tony Stark, he is a rich man. Quote. That's right, we're going to meet this guy, let's go. The two did not hesitate. Leon took the Spider-Woman Gwen towards the Stark Industrial Building. He knew that Tony Stark usually lived in the rooftop villa, which was only about a kilometer away from the location of the two, and the two only took a few minutes to land on the roof of the Stark Industrial Building. Hi friends, come in. Tony Stark stood on the windowsill on the villa and beckoned to the two. The two entered through the main entrance, and Leon observed everywhere after he came in, and I have to say that the real rich people have essential differences from ordinary people in life. At this time, Tony Stark also walked down at this time, stretched out his arms towards Leon and said, "My dear friend, welcome to be a guest." Quote. "Stop, I'm not used to this." Leon coldly refused. Okay, you're really sad." Tony Stark was unimpressed. Tony Stark's home, there is nothing magnificent, some are just simple, but this simplicity is extraordinary, but Leon is only indifferent to the eyes, there is no need to envy. Tony Stark led the two to a wine cabinet, sat down at a table next to it, he took out 2 glasses and poured one for all 3. "Try it, the wines produced by the Santo Tropel winery in 93 years are not much in stock now." Leon shook his head and pushed the glass back. "Just bring me a can of beer, I don't like red wine, that's not my thing." Quote. "Hey man, you have to learn to enjoy. How long has your company been in existence? Your current net worth is estimated to have exceeded 300 million, I believe in half a year, then your company value will definitely be able to increase 100 times, you are already rich," Tony Stark said in a demagogic tone. Leon rolled his eyes at him, took the beer he threw over, and said, "I don't need you to teach, I just don't like red wine." Quote. "Okay man, maybe you'll like these things when you're my age, so now let's talk about who is this lady next to you?" he asked. Leon glanced at Gwen the Spider-Woman, who hadn't taken off her hood yet, just sat there quietly. "My sister, Gwen Stacy," Leon said. "Man, I'm serious," Tony Stark said seriously. "I'm serious too." Leon nodded to Gwen the Spider-Woman, who removed the hood, revealing her pretty face. "Wow," Tony Stark exclaimed exaggeratedly. "Oh my god, is this true? When did your sister have superpowers too?" Quote. Leon shrugged. "It's true that she is my sister, but strictly speaking, she should be my sister in another world." Quote. Seeing Tony Stark's surprised eyes, Leon smiled and said, "Remember the last time I asked you to check the disappearance of the spider? That's why she's here." Quote. "You mean, parallel worlds?" Tony Stark asked uncertainly. "Yes, it is indeed a parallel world, she has superpowers in that world, and because she fought an enemy, she was involved in a torrent of energy, and accidentally crossed over to this side, and at the same time you found the energy impact in that alley. It was also because of that energy torrent, the little spider happened to be in that time and place, in this world was involved in it, she came to this world, if the little spider is not dead, it is likely to cross into the world she is in." Leon explained roughly and heard this. Tony subconsciously looked at Gwen the Spider-Woman, who just nodded calmly. "Oh my god, parallel space theory, this is incredible, so this young lady, are you willing to join us?" Tony Stark went straight to the foot of the wall. "Ahem," Leon coughed, "meaning you give me attention, don't dig into the wall so blatantly." "Okay man, don't be so nervous," Tony said helplessly. At this time, Spider-Woman Gwen suddenly asked, "Do you have a way to let me go back? I mean, let me go back to my original world." Quote. Tony Stark glanced at Leon, thought for a moment and shook his head. "It's a pity, although you are standing in front of me and it is also true that you have traveled from different worlds, but with the current technology, it is impossible to cross parallel space, because we don't know the principle at all." Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen looked disappointed, but not sad, because this was what Leon had told her a long time ago, and she was already mentally prepared. Leon patted her shoulder and comforted. "Don't think so much first, there is an old saying in Washaw, when the ship is naturally straight to the bridge, things will always turn around." Quote. "I understand, you don't need to comfort me, I'm not that fragile." Spider-Woman Gwen smiled at him. "That's good," Leon said and said to Tony Stark, "I don't want you or the SHIELD people to disturb her life, because she is only a child, and no danger can involve her." Quote. Leon. Spider-Woman Gwen wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Leon. "This matter is not negotiable, you can continue to pursue your beliefs, but for me, it is my responsibility to protect you from threats." Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen nodded and said nothing more. Tony Stark patted you on the head and said, "Are we so unworthy of your trust?" Quote. "No, it's not a matter of trust, but I think it's a very troublesome thing to be involved with you, that's all," Leon said directly. Okay, man, is there anything I can do to help? Tony asked again. Leon doesn't hate S.H.I.E.L.D. much, just sheer vigilance, and the same is true for Tony, but after this period of contact, he can be regarded as more or less understanding of his personality and temperament. So when he heard this, he didn't say politely, "It just so happens that there is really something you need to help her get her identity, and then arrange a shrinking high school, she needs to continue school." Quote, "It's not difficult, what about you? What do you mean?" Tony laughed, "Aren't you going to school?" Quote, "I just took a leave of absence, and I don't think anyone else can teach me now." Leon said very confidently, and then remembered something, so he said, "Remember not to put them together, stay away, you know what I'm talking about." Quote, Okay, no problem, it's easy." Tony didn't refuse. Tony Stark would not refuse him in this kind of thing, because it was a very small matter for Tony, and it was enough to arrange for his subordinates to do it, and it was easy to handle with his ability and relationships. The main thing Leon came over this time was this one, but he had something else to ask Tony Stark. "Do you have any researchers you know well? The kind that specializes in parallel universes?" Leon said. Tony Stark shrugged, "Do you see me as someone with this need? You are also rich, and you are fully capable of forming a laboratory of your own to study this." Quote, "Trust me, money makes you happy, it helps you accomplish a lot of things you want to accomplish," Tony Stark said in a demagogic tone. Leon glanced at him and pouted without saying anything more. This guy is right, money is definitely a direct force of sin in this world, as Tony Stark firmly believes. The poor rely on it, the rich rely on technology. Tony Stark's ability is not anything else, or money, or banknote ability, so that so many super suits can be developed and produced. "Okay, I'll think about that." Saying that, he glanced at Gwen the Spider-Woman. She also looked at Leon, her eyes were full of excitement, although she hid it well, but she was still seen by Leon. Leon knew what was on her mind and understood her eagerness to go back. After all, for her, that world was her home. "By the way, you talk to S.H.I.E.L.D. over there, don't let people disturb her, she is a person who sticks to good intentions, she also has her pursuit, let her do what she likes," Leon said again. "You mean, she's like that little spider?" Tony Stark asked. "It's just similar. Leon doesn't want this girl to have anything to do with that little spider. Compared to the Gwen at home, he has more curiosity about the Spider-Woman Gwen, and wants to see if he can teach her to be his cute sister, which is like a big one practice, and now he can practice a trumpet again. That's a lot of fun, isn't it? Okay, this is a small matter, I will say yes to Nick Fury, so that what kind of person will your sister become in the future? I mean, what to call her?" Tony Stark asked, also looking at Gwen the Spider-Woman. She glanced at Leon, and then said directly, "Just call me Spider-Woman." Quote, "Well, Spider-Woman, very nice name." Leon nodded. He knows what Tony Stark means. Now that the little spider is gone, he is leading the class, but this is not a long-term thing, and now the appearance of Gwen the Spider-Woman just happens to be the work of the spider, which is also her pursuit, and it can be regarded as killing two birds with one stone. And Tony wants to know her title, and he wants to build momentum for her in the media, so that she can replace Spider in the fastest time, so as to help stabilize the security situation in New York City. That's right, Spider-Woman is the wrong name. Tony Stark also nodded, and then asked Leon, "The thing you came across on the street before, where is it now?" Quote, "I don't know, I guess I have already fled away." Leon certainly wouldn't admit something was in him. "As far as I know, that thing should be an alien symbiote, I've seen one, calling himself Venom, that's not a guy who can get along well, so I suggest you be careful." "I will." Tony Stark didn't ask much, presumably he also knew the difficulty of the symbiote, and did not guess that the Carnage was now in Leon's system storage compartment. "Then let's talk about you." "My business?" Leon wondered. "Oh, I mean, about your company," Tony Stark said. "What do you mean?" Leon looked strange. "For example, capital injection or something," Tony Stark said. He was a businessman, a capitalist, and he was sure to be thrilled when he saw the potential of Leon's company. "Didn't I already say that last time? Capital injection is impossible. I don't accept investment from anyone, I need to have 100% control of the company," Leon said firmly. "Hey man, you have to know a little, in this world, there is no relationship compared to the relationship of interests. You want the company to grow, then it is necessary to cede a part of the interests, so that you can survive in society. I believe you know this very well. Tony Stark said seriously. Thank you for your advice, but I still have to refuse. I think I have the ability to challenge the unspoken rules of the whole society. Leon smiled lightly, but his eyes were indeed calm. He has the courage to do that, within reason. He doesn't mind following certain rules, but when those rules don't defend his interests, then breaking it is something that must be done. Leon thinks that with his current ability, there is nothing on the entire Earth to stop him, even if he is the enemy of the entire United States. He has absolute confidence. You really think so? Tony Stark said with a strange face. Of course, I'm not kidding you. Okay man, I'm looking forward to the day you do it. I have prepared a meal. Do I need to stay and eat something? Tony suddenly changed the subject. Forget it, I'm very busy I know, so we won't bother you. Goodbye. Leon doesn't want to have more contact with him. In short, contact with him, there will always be a bunch of trouble. By the way, don't forget that you still have to work 2 days. I haven't forgotten. Leon left with Spider-Woman Gwen, and the two did not go back, because it was still early. Spider-Woman still wanted to continue to patrol outside. She did not regard this as work, purely because of a hobby and thought. Leon naturally supported her. Anyway, he didn't have much to do now, so he accompanied her outside for more than 2 hours, and then returned to the rented home for her together, and after some advice, he was ready to leave. Stay tonight. Spider-Woman Gwen said so. What? Leon thought he had misheard. We should get to know each other better. Spider-Woman Gwen said again. Well, as you wish. I also think you should get acquainted with me as soon as possible. Leon laughed. Then he slept in another room, which was big enough anyway. Naturally speechless overnight, although he was curious about this cheap girl, he only thought it was his own sister, but the Spider-Woman Gwen in the other room was turning over and couldn't sleep. She simply took out her mobile phone and looked at it. She is looking at the photo. The photo is a photo of the two. The two are standing at the top of the Empire State Building. In the photo she is standing in front. Leon is standing behind her, is putting one arm around her waist. Both of them are exposed. She is holding the mobile phone. Leon compared a very vulgar V hand to the camera, and both of them smiled brightly. There were also 2 people flying in the air together. She took out her mobile phone to take a secret photo. The photo was only Leon. He was holding a burger to his mouth, and there was still residual cheese on the corner of his mouth. There is also a picture where Leon found her secretly filming and made a Hercules movement when she was in midair, a very funny kind. She was photographed in a small half of her face, showing a bright smile. There are more and more such photos in the back. Leon laughing, posing in the air, imitating Superman, funny. The last picture is still taken secretly by her. It is Leon standing on the rooftop of a tall building, holding his arms and looking at the street scene below. From the side, he is tall, very strong, muscles are not exaggerated, but full of a sense of strength, deep eyes, sword eyebrows are very attractive. In the evening, the two did not encounter many things, but her sense of Leon was getting better and better, because Leon did take care of her family, which made her feel safe after being displaced to this world. In one fell swoop, she took hundreds of photos, and when she couldn't sleep, she flipped through the photos and laughed twice from time to time. This guy, don't you know that this to a woman will make a woman think otherwise? It is also said that it is my brother, but he is not related by blood, and he has only become familiar with strangers, so how can I consider myself a sister? Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen was distressed and scratched her hair in distress, but she didn't know that Leon slept better than anyone else in another room, and he projected it twice, one saber-toothed tiger and another Tear Summers, so that he now reached 176% saber-toothed tiger ability and 217% Scott Summers ability. The next morning, Leon got up on time, and today he was still on time, which he was familiar with, and after about 10 minutes to get breakfast ready, he put it on the table. The door opened, and Gwen the Spider-Woman came out sleepily. Get up, clean up, come and eat. Leon saw that she had some dark circles under her eyes, and then said, didn't sleep well last night. Nightmares. Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen rolled her eyes, with that pretty face, but also looked a little amorous, ignored Leon's words, and went directly to the bathroom. She did dream yesterday night. and what she dreamed was still Leon, but unfortunately that dream was a little strange, making her blush a little when she thought about it, so she couldn't say it, absolutely couldn't say it. After washing up and going to the dining table, she ate silently, secretly observing Leon's eyes from time to time, while Leon was eating while reading the newspaper, not paying attention to her eyes, and seemed very focused. Spider-Woman Gwen looked at him like this, and suddenly saw her father's shadow from him, giving her the same heavy sense of security, the same feeling of family, but, I just can't treat him as an older brother. This guy, don't you know how much he attracts the attention of women? Quote. Thinking like this, she seemed to suddenly remember something, and glanced at Leon again with some weakness, and then quickly took a large bite of bread. What's wrong? Leon put down the newspaper, although he did not pay attention to Gwen the Spider-Woman, but the spider sense detected something strange. Ahem, nothing, what are we going to do today? She asked. You better rest during the day, I have to go to the company, there are some things to deal with in the company. Spider-Woman Gwen nodded and pretended to be casual, come back for dinner at noon. Quote. Good. Quote. Leon was stunned at first, but he didn't think much about it, but he still looked at her, and always felt that this girl was a little wrong since yesterday night. Do I have flowers on my face? Spider-Woman Gwen said a little unnaturally. Leon put down the newspaper and suddenly stretched out his hand to put it on the door of her head and asked, are you sick? Well, the body temperature is normal. Hey, your body temperature is rising, your face is a little red, you are really sick. Quote. Snap. Spider-Woman Gwen slapped Leon's hand away and said angrily, I'm not sick, I'm healthy. Quote. Then why did your face turn red? Belch, are you coming? Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen's face became even redder when she heard this, her hands snapped on the table, and she stood up and said, I'm not sick, I said I'm healthy, I didn't come, now I'm fine. Quote. Say what to do so loudly, you go find the property manager, cough. Leon subconsciously said a terrier in his previous life, and was about to explain, but the Spider-Woman Gwen over there got up and quickly returned to the room, closed the door and covered her chest. Oops, this may be the heartbeat feeling. Spider-Woman Gwen is still a little flustered at this time, she does not have the slightest experience in love in that world. There is a saying, which girl is not pregnant with spring, especially a man like Leon who spoils people without the slightest bit of discipline, young, handsome, golden, capable, basically no girl can be indifferent to him. She was flustered that Leon completely regarded her as a sister, and she had a little indescribable thought, as an American, enthusiasm and openness were her character, but when she met Leon who positioned herself as an older brother, she also didn't know how to speak, and returned to the flustered by his 3 or 2 words. Leon outside doesn't know Gwen the Spider-Woman's mental journey, and if he does, he will only say a big word. He touched his chin and looked at the girl's door, wondering in his heart while saying to himself, it can't really be that what's coming, right? Are American teenage girls also shy? It's really strange, should I go down and help her buy an ant towel? Forget it, I can't help with this. Quote. Hey, didn't you eat breakfast? He said suddenly. I'll eat again later, I have something to do now. The girl's voice came out of the door. Okay. Leon didn't plan to continue this topic, took 5 minutes to finish his breakfast, packed up and knocked on the girl's door. I'll go first, you can rest at home in the morning, you can also go out for a stroll, remember to call me if something happens. Quote. Duh. The concierge opened, and Gwen the Spider-Woman came out of it. She had changed her clothes, still white tight pants, and a change of clothes on it, plain face, but it was difficult to hide her youthful beauty. Okay, stay safe on the road. Spider-Woman Gwen gave her a girly hug like a normal family farewell. Leon patted her on the shoulder, and left. Everything on the company's side is already on track, there are not many things he needs to worry about, and when he arrives at the company, he just looks at it, just happened to meet his sister Gwen coming out with some materials, and after seeing him, he said, you finally showed up today, I thought you were missing. Quote. How come, how is the company's finances in the past 2 days? What else? Gwen gave him a blank look, and then said, congratulations, you capitalist, you have made money, a lot of money. Quote. What do you mean? Leon wondered. Morse Rog has negotiated several large contracts with several car manufacturers, worth $1.3 billion. You are ready to continue to expand the plant. In addition, a new department has been formed in the company, and the financial department on my side is already being formed, and when the formation is completed, I don't have to stay. Remember what I promised and fund me to set up my own laboratory." Leon raised his eyebrows. This is good news, so it seems that with it, his net worth can exceed 10 billion, which is gratifying and congratulatory. "Of course, I will do what I promised you." Leon stepped forward and put his arm around Gwen affectionately, looking at her seriously, wanting to see what was the difference between her and Gwen the Spider-Woman. "Why are you looking at me like that?" "Wait." Gwen's nose moved, and she asked with a smell of perfume. "On you, there is a woman's perfume smell. I remember you never used perfume. Can you tell me who it is? Do you have a romantic relationship? Or do you have a new bed partner?" Gwen looked at him strangely. Leon coughed. His face was a little unnatural. "It's just an ordinary friend, don't misunderstand, I'm still single for the time being." Quote. "Really? The way you lie is fake." Quote. "Gwen knows him too well. The two have grown up. Even if he is deceiving people, people will not see the clue, but now anyone with a discerning eye can see that he is lying, but he actually does not admit it." Seeing Gwen's expression of deceiving me, Leon wiped his face. "Of course it's true, will I still cheat on you?" Ha ha ha. Quote. Leon was smiling awkwardly, but Gwen suddenly asked, "By the way, I haven't asked who the woman in the white suit you were with yesterday night was. Can you talk to me?" Quote. "Ah." Leon's smile froze suddenly, and this expression fell in Gwen's eyes, which made her affirm, "You really have a new girlfriend, wouldn't you like to share it with me?" Gwen suddenly became interested, and said, "The news calls that woman Spider-Woman, does she have the same superpowers as you? Can I meet her? Her suit is cool and very beautiful, and she has a good figure. What does she look like? Is it pretty? What is your name?" Quote. Leon looked at Gwen strangely. It was hard to imagine that she would show such a fangirl expression one day, so she said, "She is a friend of mine. Speaking of history, she will have something to do with Peter Parker at that time." Quote. "What?" Gwen was taken aback and hurriedly said, "You have news from Peter?" Quote. "Yes, I came here today to tell you about it." Leon roughly told Peter Parker and Gwen Spider-Woman about the origins. He concealed the name of Spider-Woman Gwen, only saying that she was Spider-Man from another world, and Peter Parker was probably teleported to another world. "So, Peter is still alive?" Gwen asked. "Yes, I estimate that he is still alive and well, so you don't have to worry. I haven't had a way to find him for the time being, but with his ability, he should be able to live well in any world." Leon comforted. "Oh, that's fine, as long as I'm not dead, I don't have to worry." Gwen was blunt, and her worries stemmed from her past relationship with Peter, and now she had a new interest. "Is it okay to take me to meet that Spider-Woman?" Leon's scalp tingled when he heard this. No wonder Leon's heart trembled. It was because if these two girls really met together, it would be an absolute disaster for Leon, indeed a disaster. Imagine how normal people feel as unique individuals suddenly knowing that another self is running from another world. It must be terrifying. If Leon encounters this situation, then he will definitely do everything to kill the other party. Fear, in this case, normal people will definitely be afraid, and then begin to doubt themselves. So Leon will definitely not be willing to let the two women meet, but he also knows very well in his heart that the two women use him as a relationship bond, and they will know each other sooner or later, and all he can do is try to make that day come as long as possible. "I'm sorry, I can't promise you this, because she definitely won't want to." Leon shook his head. "Why?" Gwen asked with some doubt. "There is no why, she is just unwilling. Do you still want to force people?" Leon patted Gwen's head. Gwen was obviously a little unhappy when he heard this, and then pouted and looked at him so fixedly, without speaking, a look that if you don't promise me, I keep looking at you like this. A minute passed, and Gwen didn't speak. 2 minutes passed, and Gwen didn't speak. "Hey, you're like this, it's hard for me to do it." Leon felt that this girl was really difficult. "You're going to take me, okay." Gwen doesn't know how today. It seems a little different from usual. Anyway, she is pestering to meet with the Spider-Woman Gwen, but this kind of thing Leon must not agree to her, otherwise there will be a big mess. "In another way, I can definitely promise you, but I can't promise you this matter, I'm sorry." Leon suddenly turned pale and seriously refused. "HMPH. Gwen said, if you don't want to, forget it." Quote. That's good. Leon breathed a sigh of relief. Then he quickly changed the subject. Where is Morse Rogue now? Quote. At the factory, he was eyeing the production and plant expansion, and the company had borrowed $300 million from the bank to expand the original plant 20 times, which needs your signature. Okay. Leon came to his exclusive office, and dealt with affairs in the company all morning, even if he threw his hands on the cabinet, but some things still had to be handled by him personally. Fortunately, there are not many things that the company needs him to shoot now, otherwise he will really regret starting this company. It was almost noon. He and Gwen said and left. Gwen behaved normally, he didn't think much, drove towards the Spider-Woman Gwen, but said, not long after he went downstairs, Gwen called a car and fell far behind his car. Leon didn't notice anything about this, because the house rented for Spider-Woman Gwen was in the downtown area, and it was normal for him to get off and go in the apartment building, and he wouldn't have thought that his sister would actually follow him. She Sheeran's parking, she Sheeran's upstairs, she Sheeran's opening the door. He had no idea that someone was following him carefully, and that person seemed to be familiar with spider sensing, so he deliberately didn't pay much attention to him, and just used his mobile phone to take a video of him going upstairs. This person was naturally Gwen. Leon didn't know this at all, and as soon as he entered the door, he saw that Gwen the Spider-Woman had already prepared the meal. Just when I came back, I made Chinese food, and I heard that Chinese people's favorite food is Chinese food. Spider-Woman Gwen said. There were 3 plates of dishes on the table, as well as a bowl of soup, which surprised Leon a little, and he said, how do you think I will like Chinese food? Quote. This is obviously a stereotype of good or not. Ah, isn't it? Spider-Woman Gwen was a little surprised. Well, let me try your craft. Leon sat down and picked up the chopsticks and tasted it. The unexpected taste was okay. He nodded and said, it's not bad, but it's not authentic Chinese food. You found the recipe on the internet, right? This kind of Chinese food is already suitable for you Americans. If you want to eat authentic Chinese food, you have to go to Washaw. Quote. Well, this is what I just learned. I hope you like it. Spider-Woman Gwen shrugged. Leon smiled. He could feel the other party's heart, nodded, and said, I like it very much. Quote. The two were talking and laughing and eating. Spider-Woman Gwen couldn't use chopsticks, so she could only use a spoon, and there was a knock on the door while eating. I'll open the door, Spider-Woman Gwen said and took the spoon and went over to open the door. There was a corridor from the restaurant to the door. Leon couldn't see the door where he was, but he heard the sound of the spoon hitting the ground, and he said, what's the matter Gwen? Quote. After a long time without moving, Leon got up and went over to look, and when he saw the person standing at the door, he suddenly felt a little dry mouth. At the door, Gwen was standing there dumbfounded, with a big mouth and a face full of disbelief, and the Spider-Woman Gwen in front of her was facing away from Leon, but she was probably with a similar expression. Leon's head is huge, and this is really the end of the calf. He never thought how this girl would grope herself over. This is simply a joke. You guys, stop standing there, come first. Leon could only speak first. The two women were still looking at each other, and hearing that the Spider-Woman Gwen let go and gave Leon a strange look, Leon shrugged at her. Gwen walked in and looked at Leon with an unkind face. My dear brother, can you explain who she is? Why does it look so similar to me? Quote. This matter is going to be talked about, but it's a bit long. Let's sit down and talk slowly, don't get excited first. Gwen sat down on the sofa next to her, holding her arms and legs. Her eyes kept on Gwen the Spider-Woman, while Gwen the Spider-Woman sat down next to Leon, and it seemed silent at this time. Leon opened his mouth, but did not say anything, and after a long silence, he said, what I want to say next is true. I hope you don't get emotional after listening to it. Quote. Gwen nodded. She was now full of questions. There was actually a person in front of her who looked exactly like herself, which was a little difficult to accept. Leon explained the reason for the appearance of Spider-Woman Gwen. He did not choose to hide it. Anyway, the two have already met. There is no point in hiding it. It is better to say it directly, so as not to have any accidents later. Gwen listened to his face change from time to time, feeling like he was listening to a science fiction story, and after a long time, he said, are you sure you didn't lie to me? Is there really a parallel world in this world? Isn't this just a conjecture? Quote. The reality is right in front of you. You can't believe it, she is the Spider-Man of her world, just like Peter Parker in this world, but the two accidentally crossed into each other's world. Gwen was slightly silent, and then looked up at the Spider-Woman Gwen and said, "So, what will you do in the future?" Quote. "I can answer that for her." Leon interjected. "What do you mean?" Gwen wondered. Leon beckoned to her. Gwen got up suspiciously, but was pulled over by Leon, and sat on his side. All of a sudden, Leon stretched out his hand and put his arm around the shoulders of the two women, and then said, "She is you, but you two are different individuals. She is Gwen of her world, you are Gwen of this world. They are unique, just like, she came to live in this world for a while, and I will try to find a way to help her go back, so her ultimate goal must be to go back." Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen nodded, affirming his statement, and added, "Although it feels strange to face you, I really won't live in this world all the time, this place does not belong to me." Quote. Gwen did not resist Leon's embrace, although some complained that Leon hid such a big thing, but in the end she was a reasonable girl. "So, in this world, do you still want to show people the name Gwen Stacy?" Gwen asked. Spider-Woman Gwen nodded, and then said, "Even if I don't belong here, my name is Gwen Stacy, I will naturally use this name to appear in front of others. If you don't agree, I can only say sorry." Quote. "No, I agree, although incredible, wouldn't object to this, I just didn't know what to do with her," Gwen said directly. "Well, I can understand it, and I don't know how to face you." Spider-Woman Gwen nodded in agreement. "Hey, have you two forgotten that I am the brother you both share, and with me, I will take care of this," Leon said. Gwen looked at him with a smile, then at Spider-Woman, and suddenly said, "Do you like him and fall in love with him?" Quote. What? Leon was stunned. How could it be? Nothing. Spider-Woman Gwen's reaction was slightly bigger, and she broke free from Leon's hand, looking a little unnatural. Sure enough, Gwen looked clear. She got up and stood in front of the two, looking at the two condescendingly, looking at both of them very unnaturally. Leon's unnaturalness is due to embarrassment, and Gwen the Spider-Woman's unnaturalness is because what she wants to be seen through. "I know my brother's attraction to women, he is my brother, but not your brother, because for you, he has no blood relationship with you, so it is inevitable that you will fall in love with him." "Fact, what nonsense are you talking about? I just see her as a sister." Leon frowned. "But she didn't treat you as a brother, didn't you really see it?" Gwen chuckled at him. Leon was a little unnatural, he could more or less detect this, so it was even more embarrassing. Spider-Woman Gwen didn't know what to think, her face suddenly became a little rosy. Leon turned her head and looked, just saw her like this, and couldn't help but feel sudden. "Ahem, let's change the subject," he said unnaturally. Gwen suddenly said to the Spider-Woman Gwen, "Actually, if you put aside me and his family identity, I am a little moved. If you want to, I support you." Quote. What? Leon thought he had misheard, and he looked at Gwen differently. Gwen, the Spider-Woman, nodded thoughtfully and said, "I will." Quote. "Hey, you two are enough, I haven't said anything yet," Leon said. "You don't have a say because you provoked it, so you have to fix it." Gwen Dow. "What do you mean?" Leon asked. "Ask her," Gwen said with a smile. Leon looked at Gwen the Spider-Woman, who just smiled at him and didn't say anything, which made him wonder even more why the two women suddenly had such a tacit understanding and played dumb puzzles with him together. "I think it's necessary for you to meet our parents," Gwen said to Gwen the Spider-Woman again. Spider-Woman Gwen shook her head. "I'm not ready." Quote. "Okay, tell me when you think about it, then I'll hide this from them for the time being." Gwen nodded in agreement. Leon suddenly felt so redundant. "In other words, let's have lunch first, today there is Chinese food specially made by Gwen." Leon interjected. "I didn't do it." Gwen looked at him and pouted. "For her." Leon patted his head, feeling that the fun must be greater in the future. In short, fortunately, Gwen did not continue to mess around. Leon also breathed a sigh of relief. This Neezy is much more difficult than Spider-Woman Gwen, which is also to blame him, since he was a child, he and the family spoiled, making this girl a little lawless. She is still very ladylike in front of people, but in front of her family, she is quite wild. Added a pair of chopsticks. Unlike the Spider-Woman Gwen can't use chopsticks, his sister Gwen is quite skilled in chopsticks. After all, there is a Chinese like Leon at home, and she will eat a few Chinese meals from time to time at home, which she is familiar with. A meal was quickly eaten, and Gwen and Spider-Woman Gwen chatted at the dinner table, mostly talking about Spider-Woman Gwen's growth trajectory, her childhood life, growth experience, and family atmosphere, etc., and also talked about Leon's growth trajectory. Gwen also said a lot of embarrassment when he was a child, and the atmosphere at the dinner table was also warm, but the three of them were a little strange in their hearts. Leon is looking at the two women in front of him like twins, thinking about what the two women will think in their hearts, and Gwen and Spider-Woman Gwen also have a little strange emotions in each other's hearts, roughly facing the other world themselves, acting a little unnatural. After eating a meal for more than half an hour, Gwen consciously cleaned up the dishes and chopsticks. The Spider-Woman Gwen was helping, and Leon was sitting on the sofa like a big uncle, watching the two women cooperate in front of the sink, and unconsciously showed a meaningful smile. I feel good about having two girls. Leon thought so. Just as she was thinking about it, Gwen the Spider-Woman's hand holding the plate suddenly trembled, and then Leon saw her left hand illusory, and the plate fell to the ground with a snap and shattered. Ah! Gwen was startled, and when he turned his head, he saw the Spider-Woman Gwen looking at him with her hands raised, looking a little stunned. Ah, your hand, Gwen exclaimed. Leon stepped forward with an arrow and reached out to grab Spider-Woman Gwen's left hand, but a strange scene happened. His hand turned out to be directly through Spider-Woman Gwen's arm, as if her hand did not exist at all, very illusory. What's going on? Leon, help her. Gwen is very intersected. Spider-Woman Gwen heard the voice, then came back to her senses, turned her head to look at the two, and then rolled her eyelids, raised her head and fell backwards. Ah! Gwen hurriedly reached out to help, but Leon was faster than her, and took the Spider-Woman Gwen in her arms one step ahead of her. Fortunately, Spider-Woman is no different from a normal person except for her left arm becoming illusory, but even so, Leon is full of surprise and worry. What's wrong with her? Gwen said eagerly. Leon shook his head. He was also a puzzle in his mind now, and his face was serious. Go, take her to the hospital first. Quote. But her arm. Before Gwen's words were finished, he saw that the Spider-Woman Gwen's left arm gradually solidified again, and the illusory translucent feeling disappeared, and it seemed to recover. Leon reached out and covered his left arm, and the real touch came, pinched, and everything seemed normal, as if the change just now had not appeared at all. He and Gwen looked at each other, and both saw the urgency in each other's eyes. Go. Leon picked up Gwen the Spider-Woman, went to the door and took off the car keys hanging on the wall and threw them to Gwen. You come and drive. Quote. Gwen nodded and didn't say much, and knew that now was not the time to speak, so he followed Leon downstairs quickly, came to the parking lot, drove the car that Leon had newly bought for Spider-Woman Gwen, and rushed all the way to the nearest hospital. On the way, Leon tried to wake up Gwen the Spider-Woman, but the latter did not react, and Leon's expression became heavier, urging Gwen to drive the car faster. I know, don't rush, I've already run 3 red lights, a police car is catching up with me behind. Sure enough, the siren sounded behind, and in a blink of an eye, a police car drove over. In the United States, the police have very large law enforcement powers. If they see a threat, they dare to shoot directly. Gwen opened the window and said directly, there are patients here, please help us, it is best to help us open the way. Quote. Hearing her say this, the police car accelerated directly, swooped in front of the car, and drove for them. There was a police car on the road, and the 10-minute journey took less than 5 minutes to finish. Leon jumped out of the car with Gwen the Spider-Woman, who just thanked the police, and then ran in. Spider-Woman Gwen was quickly tightened into the emergency room, but within 10 minutes the doctor came out. How is my sister? Leon asked. She's just in an ordinary coma, we've given her first aid, and now she's awake, and after a little observation, you can be discharged and leave in the evening. Hearing this, Leon breathed a sigh of relief. She was really afraid that something was wrong with Gwen the Spider-Woman. Since it was just an ordinary coma, then it should not be a big problem. But as soon as he thought of what happened at home before, Leon frowned a little, and Spider-Woman Gwen's left arm became transparent and illusory, which was definitely not normal. Could it be, and it has to do with her not being in this world? Leon thought. Just thinking about it, Spider-Woman Gwen has been pushed out in a wheelchair, with a tube hanging from her hand, and she has been injected with glucose to replenish her body nutrients. How are you feeling now? Gwen asked her. Spider-Woman Gwen smiled and said, I'm fine, you don't have to worry. Quote. The doctor looked at the two women with some surprise and asked, Are you twins? It's the first time I've seen twins that look like this. Quote. Yes, we are twins, I am the older sister, she is the younger sister. It was Gwen who spoke, and she relaxed a little. Leon rolled her eyes. This girl was still as strong as ever. Spider-Woman Gwen just smiled and didn't say anything, and the doctor also smiled and said, Okay, she doesn't have any big problems, don't be too nervous, you guys wait for her to rest for a while, and then you can almost leave. Quote. Okay, thank you doctor. Leon thanked him. The doctor left. Leon pushed Gwen the Spider-Woman to a quiet place, crouched in front of her and asked, How are you feeling now? Quote. It feels good, what happened to me just now? Spider-Woman Gwen asked. Leon lowered his voice and said, Your arm disappeared just now, remember? Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen nodded. Of course remember, is there something wrong with this? Quote. Leon said seriously. It is very likely to be related to yourself. Quote. Are you saying that this is why I am not from this world? Leon nodded and lowered his voice. I can't rule out this situation, and it is even very likely that this is the reason. Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen's eyes lit up. So in this way, if I disappear in this world, will I return to the world I was in? Quote. Leon and Gwen looked at each other, and then he shook his head and said, I'm not sure, but I have a bad hunch that if you disappear in this world, it is very likely that you will really disappear. Quote. You mean, will I die? Spider-Woman Gwen asked with wide eyes. Leon said in a deep voice, I'm not sure, it's just my guess. Quote. You've got to help her. Gwen said suddenly. I know, I'll figure it out. Leon nodded solemnly. So what do we do now? Gwen asked again. Leon thought for a while, and then said, Let's go now, go find Tony Stark first, now we need his help. Quote. Is that the rich young master, playboy? Gwen said. Yes, you actually know him. Gwen was surprised. Leon rolled his eyes. Your focus is great, isn't it strange that I know him? And, now isn't the time to pay attention to this either, right? Quote. Well, I'm just surprised. Gwen delivered. Let's go now, Leon said. Good. Gwen the Spider-Woman said that she was about to tear off the needle on the back of her hand, but was stopped by Leon. He directly picked her up and said, Let's go like this, let Gwen hold the medicine bottle. Quote. Gwen rolled her eyes, but still picked up the pill bottle and held it up, and the three walked straight out of the hospital. This time it was Leon driving, Gwen sitting in the back, and he started talking on the phone as he drove. The phone was quickly connected, and Tony Stark's voice came from the other side. I need your help, Leon said without nonsense and concisely. What? I said, I need your help. Leon repeated. What's going on? Tony Stark was a little puzzled. Leon told what happened to Gwen the Spider-Woman, and the other end of the phone was slightly silent, and then said, Then quickly bring her here. Quote. No, I'll give you an address, you take her directly over there are professional instruments over there, I will help her do a full body examination, hoping to find the cause. Tony Stark said. Good. Leon didn't talk nonsense, hung up the phone directly, and after more than 10 seconds, he received a text message on his mobile phone, which was an address. Leon swung the steering wheel, and the car was moving through the traffic like a swimming fish. 10 minutes later, Leon came to a campus outside the suburbs of New York. He was stopped by a guard at the door. Leon took out the phone and dialed Tony Stark's phone and handed it to the guard, who listened to a few words and let him go. The place you are going to is laboratory number 13 in Area A. Follow the signs, don't go anywhere else. The guard said. Leon nodded. The car entered the park. He drove the car underground according to the prompts, and then the three got out of the car, entered the underground, and soon came to laboratory A13, where they waited patiently. Almost 10 minutes later, Tony Stark came over. He was stunned when he saw the three, and then looked at the two women with strange faces, and then said, Didn't you say don't let them meet? Quote. Accidental. Leon is like gold. Okay, it's your business anyway, come in. Tony Stark opened the door of the laboratory, and when he went in, he saw a well-equipped laboratory, with a place similar to an operating table in the center. which was actually a test bench, and there were many unnamed instruments around. Leon put Spider-Woman Gwen on it. Tony directly removed the needle from her hand, and then attached it to her with the instrument next to it, and checked it. Leon probably knew what these instruments were doing and what Tony Stark was examining her, so he didn't ask. And Gwen didn't know this, so she naturally asked, "What are you checking?" Quote, "You see, I'm checking her body to see if there is any foreign interference, or energy residue," and the situation he said is very strange, something like, how to say it, some like file deletion, to put it seriously, is antivirus. Tony Stark found a metaphor. Leon frowned. He understood Tony Stark's statement. Just like an operating system, a virus was produced in it, and the system's self-defense function found the virus, and to delete the virus, that is, to fundamentally erase the virus. Leon realized the seriousness of the problem, and had not thought about this aspect before, but now that he thought about it, it was shocking. Spider-Woman Gwen is not a person of this world, and she came to this world. That is, it was like two computers accidentally connected to the internet, and then accidentally interacted. This interaction is to send the file of Spider-Woman Gwen, and at the same time send the file of Peter Parker. But the universe itself is a complex system to the extreme, and now there are aliens in this system, so the system naturally begins to repair itself, and the so-called self-repair is to delete the files that do not belong to the system. This also led to the changes in Gwen Spider-Woman's body. Leon was shocked to have an estimate. Most likely, the deletion was to erase the very existence of Gwen the Spider-Woman from this world. If that was the case, it would be a big trouble. But thinking about it so carefully, Leon suddenly shook his body. Is there any difference between Gwen the Spider-Woman who crossed over and I crossed over? She crossed over by herself, and I just came with a soul. And also, what kind of intersection did the world he was originally in have with this Marvel universe? Quote, the more Leon thought about it, the more he went deeper, and for a while he was a little sluggish. Wake up, man, what are you thinking? Tony Stark shook his hand in front of his eyes. Leon looked back at Gwen the Spider-Woman with a frown. She seemed very quiet at this time, and even looked around curiously. Apparently she also wanted to know what was going on here. How do you feel now? Leon asked. I'm fine, don't worry. Spider-Woman Gwen in turn comforted him. Gwen stepped forward and took her hand. The two had the same looks, the same figure, and even the 7 points of similarity between words and deeds, almost more twins than any twin in the world. Don't worry, Leon will definitely cure you, have faith in him. Spider-Woman Gwen nodded, I know. Quote, Tony Stark was operating the instrument and pouted, I don't agree, but now I'm checking her, and your brother didn't help much. Quote, Gwen ignored him, while Leon held his arms and waited for the results of the examination, which came out quickly. Now it seems that nothing has changed in her, everything is normal, but... Tony Stark paused at this point, and then continued, the molecular structure in her body is becoming slow. To put it simply, it is decelerating, and this process has any effect, but when the molecules stop, then... She's going to break down herself, right? Asked Leon. Tony Stark nodded and said, this is a phenomenon that has never been seen before. After all, you have to know that everything in the world has its own way of operating, even if it is a single sun. It is also related to the stability of the entire universe. These are unchangeable, but the changes in her body are a kind of abnormality, and the abnormality is still developing in a bad direction. Quote, Leon nodded and said, you forgot that she is not this senior sister's person, that is, the matter that constitutes her own is the substance of another universe. Quote, yes, this can be explained, but this change is difficult to end. Tony Stark's brow furrowed as well. So is there any way to stabilize this situation first? Leon asked. Tony Stark shook his head, then said, unfortunately, I can't think of any way to do this. Quote, Leon nodded. In fact, he already had an idea. He had the knowledge of physics beyond this era, among which space physics was naturally included. Although this situation was special, it was not impossible. Okay, let's lend me this lab for a while. Leon said. Yes, the ownership of this laboratory is mine. I can lend you a month first. This little thing Tony Stark will not refuse. After all, he also wants to be better. Leon nodded, and then said, then, please leave first. Quote, my fac, are you kidding? Quote, Tony Stark's eyes widened. He had never seen such a person. this was no longer crossing the river to tear down the bridge, it was simply kicking people down the river after crossing the river. I'm serious, Leon said to him seriously. Fact, I can be regarded as recognizing your shamelessness. Don't say you know me in the future, I don't want to be friends with you. Tony Stark was indignant, but he couldn't do anything about Leon, he could only threaten. The things here are very valuable, this laboratory is worth hundreds of millions, you give me care, don't damage my instruments here, otherwise I will make you 10 times compensated. Quote. Well, got it, you hurry up. Leon waved his hand. Fact. Tony Stark cursed and then flung the door away. Ah, are you really good at doing this? Gwen asked. It's okay, that guy is a capitalist, what a capitalist doesn't want to do is offend another quasi-capitalist with great potential, and that quasi-capitalist happens to be me. Leon was unassuming about this. So, are you sure you can cure her? Gwen asked again. Leon smiled at her, then came to Gwen the Spider-Woman, touched her hair, and said, don't worry, I already have an idea, if this idea can be implemented, then you don't have to worry about yourself for the time being. Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen had been acting very quietly, and then smiled lightly at Leon, and then said, okay, as you arrange, I trust you. Quote. Gee, between you, is there really nothing? Gwen's eyes roamed between the two. Leon ignored her. Spider-Woman Gwen didn't say much, Gwen could only shrug, she saw Leon so confident, so she asked again, how sure are you? Quote. It's hard to say now, I can only say do my best, the key is that she has to relax her mood, otherwise, there is no way on my side, and she can't achieve it without cooperation. Leon said. Don't worry, I will cooperate with you well. Spider-Woman Gwen smiled and said, after all, I still want to take a good look at this world and see how different it is from the world I am in. Quote. That's good. Leon smiled too. He saw Spider-Woman Gwen's thoughts, and could understand it. After all, this world is completely new to her. Coming here, naturally want to take a good look, normal people will have this kind of thought. As long as she didn't have the idea of giving up, then he could use his own methods to keep her. Then, let's go back first. Leon said. Go back. Gwen's eyes widened in confusion, what about her? Quote. Leon smiled and said, this is in a hurry, I have to go back and think of a way, and then I can help her, otherwise you think I can cure her now. Quote. Well, you have the final say, I don't understand this anyway. Gwen can only say that. Leon was about to say something more when the phone rang, and he heard Tony Stark's voice when he picked it up. Forgot to tell you, I have already said hello to the park, remember to get the pass when you go out. Good. Tony Stark hung up the phone directly. Leon didn't think much, took the two women out, took the pass at the guard at the entrance of the park, and then the three returned to Gwen's house. The Spider-Woman. Gwen the Spider-Woman seemed normal now, as if everything she had experienced before was nothing more than a farce, and Leon was asking Gwen to go back first, who, even if reluctantly, knew that he wouldn't really help if he stayed. The atmosphere between her and Gwen the Spider-Woman is still a little strange. After all, two identical people face each other, and they are still a little uncomfortable. So she finally glanced at the two with great meaning, chuckled and was ready to go back, but Leon suddenly explained, by the way, George and Helen's side, let's hide it for the time being. Quote. I know. Gwen gave him a blank look, then waved his hand at Gwen the Spider-Woman and left alone. Only Leon and Spider-Woman Gwen were left in the house, and suddenly became a lot silent. Leon thought that she was still worried, so he comforted, you don't have to worry about this, I now have an idea, I should be able to let you stay, and life is worry-free. Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen came to him, straightened his waist, buried her head in his chest, and said softly, I'm not worried because of you. Quote. Leon was a little out of words, and the atmosphere between the two was a little ambiguous. Leon reached out and grabbed her shoulder, and then patted it gently, it's best this way, relax, and then go to school tomorrow. Quote. The matter of going to school has been arranged by Tony there, and even the identity and other certificates have been completed, and I have to say that this society is still the world of rich people. So what if I'm at school and it's the same as today? She asked, her eyes shining. Leon smiled and said, don't worry, I'll give you that thing in a while, you usually bring it with you, and there won't be that kind of situation. Quote. Spider-Woman Gwen smiled, smiled brightly, suddenly tiptoed, and then red lips were printed on Leon's lips. Leon's eyes widened suddenly. His face was unbelievable. He would never have thought that this girl would have such a move. The two have only known each other for a few days. He has always regarded her as his sister, and did not think about this aspect at all, but this girl's behavior really shocked him. This kiss lasted for more than a minute. Leon was a little forced to accept the meaning, mainly because his brain had not yet turned a corner. Spider-Woman Gwen looked at him with a smile after kissing, and then said, "I don't need you to be my brother, because there is no such existence as my brother in my growing environment, so how about we get along differently?" Quote. "Ah, you mean." Leon scratched his head a little. He is now one head and too big. Naturally he knows that Gwen is the kind of personality that can do what he wants, but he didn't expect that this Gwen in front of him actually had such a side. "How about being my boyfriend?" Spider-Woman Gwen laughed. Cough cough. Leon almost didn't choke on his saliva, and then hurriedly said, "But you are my sister." Quote. "I've researched it. There's a word in Chinese culture called love sister, right? A love sister is also a sister, isn't it?" Spider-Woman Gwen smiled very slyly. "When did you know these things?" Leon asked in surprise. "Yesterday evening. I looked up a lot about the culture of Washa. How is it, do you like it?" she asked. Leon coughed twice, then rubbed her head and said, "You are still young, don't think about it, this thing." Before he could finish, Gwen the Spider-Woman interrupted, "That's it." Quote. Leon. When he still wanted to say something, Spider-Woman Gwen let go of him and took 2 steps back, then jumped to the door and turned around. "How about we go out to a movie? I've never gone out to see a movie alone with another man, and after watching a movie, let's go to a nightclub, right? I wanted to do this for a long time, but unfortunately my dad never let me do it." Quote. Leon looked at her like this. He could see the uneasiness in her heart, and suddenly laughed, nodded and said, "Okay, go to the movies first, then find a better restaurant, and finally go to the nightclub." Quote. "Yay, that's great." Spider-Woman Gwen cheered. Leon can naturally see the uneasiness of the Spider-Woman Gwen. In his opinion, this girl gave up the reserved confession, but was afraid that she would refuse, so she wanted to change the topic in this way, a very rusty little trick, indicating that she had no emotional experience at all in the past, pure little white. Such a small means fell in his eyes naturally a little funny, but also a little moved. After seeing him agree, Gwen Spider-Woman looked very excited, and Leon smiled and did not delay the world, so he said, "Then let's go out." Quote. Okay. The two went out together, drove her to the nearest movie theater. Spider-Woman Gwen was very happy along the way, and when she arrived at the place, she was even more excited, and Leon was also by her. Anyway, what she wanted to eat. The two watched 2 movies in a row. The movies were selected by Spider-Woman Gwen, a comedy and a horror film. She also acted like an ordinary girl, laughing non-stop when watching a comedy, screaming when watching a horror movie, and actually drilled into the pregnancy. Leon expressed helplessness. Then at night, the two found a high-end restaurant, beautiful to enjoy a big meal. After eating, they followed the suggestion of Spider-Woman Gwen to go to a good nightclub. Leon rarely goes to nightclubs, but in order to pick up girls in school, he has also come a few times. Naturally it is familiar. Watching Spider-Woman Gwen jumping happily on the dance floor, he was also unconsciously infected, so he followed her to vent happily. During this period, it is not that no one does not come up to talk to each other, but without Leon's hand at all, she can easily subdue those men who are dominated by the lower body, and Leon is a lot more worry-free. The two played until midnight, and then drove back. Spider-Woman Gwen was still excited, and she was still chattering on the road. "I've never been to a nightclub, and now I know how happy it is to dance and vent. Thank you, what I always wanted to do but didn't dare to do before, today I finally did it. By the way, I saw you take a person out before, what did that person do?" she gushed as she asked, like a curious baby. Leon drove the car and laughed. "It's just a fool, he drugged a lady's drink." Quote. "Oh, so what did you do to him?" She didn't think Leon would let that person go. Leon turned his head and smiled at her, and then said, "His limbs were broken, and he also stepped on his lower body, and then threw him directly into an alley, where he probably slept all night." Quote. Cluck, it's really relieved, that really has to be punished fiercely. The car soon arrived. Leon dropped her off at home, and after closing the door, Gwen the Spider-Woman suddenly kept him, and then red lips printed. She was a little emotional. Leon did not refuse her kiss this time, but did not move her hands and feet, and after a moment Spider-Woman Gwen gasped in his ear, "Thank you, I know that what you said today is comforting me, I don't blame you. I'm so glad to be in this world and to meet you again, and if I die, you'll remember me, right? I mean, not your sister Gwen's identity, but a woman who loves you." Quote. Leon was slightly silent, and then hugged her tightly. "I will remember you, but not because you died." Quote. He kissed the other party's forehead and said, "In addition, what I said today is not to comfort you, but I do have a way to cure you, but this method still needs to be confirmed." Quote. Leon patted her head and said, "So, the only thing you need to do now is to take a shower, then go to sleep beautifully, go to class happily tomorrow, meet some new friends, you can continue your pursuit in the evening, and you don't have to worry about the rest." Quote. Really? Gwen the Spider-Woman looked up at him with anticipation in her eyes. Leon held her face and gently kissed her on the lips. "It's true, I promise you." Quote. A smile bloomed on her face. "Very charming. Well, I believe you." Leon bowed his head slightly, and then waved at her. "Then you rest early, I have to go get some things, and getting it right early can also put you at ease early." Quote. He said and opened the door and left. Spider-Woman Gwen opened her mouth, very much wanted him to stay tonight, but the woman's reservedness made her embarrassed to speak, and could only watch Leon's figure gradually walk away. Leon, on his part, touched his lips with a wistful smile on his face. He has not yet put his mentality right, or his thinking has not yet turned a corner. For Spider-Woman Gwen, he does hold the mentality of his sister, but today, it makes his mentality a little loose, but the feelings for Gwen's family for more than 10 years still can't let him directly pounce on Spider-Woman Gwen. What a headache. This is not hypocrisy, at least Leon's appetite is not good enough to be unscrupulous, this kind of thing, he has to think a little. Because compared to Gwen who was spoiled by him, Gwen the Spider-Woman is more pure, who doesn't like such a girl. Perhaps, next time it's time to try to get along with her as a boyfriend, cut it out and mess up. Ancient reason, I have some promises today, not decisive enough. Leon thought so, then shook his head. Let's find a way to turn that idea into a reality first, emotional things, not in a hurry. With that in mind, he drove to his lab, and now he had the idea of curing Gwen Spider-Woman, and the rest needed to be practiced, and the lab had exactly what he needed. Leon does have an idea now, not so much an idea as an inspiration. When he learned that the problem with Gwen Spider-Woman was due to a slowdown at the molecular level, and over time, when this slowdown reached a certain level, the matter that supported her own existence would collapse, which was almost an unsolvable problem. But Leon understands the reason. The reason for this situation is nothing more than that her own material is not this world. In other words, her own stability has no energy to maintain, although you can supplement energy and nutrients through eating, but compared to her own existence, it is just a drop in the bucket. This is like alcohol volatilizing. If the alcohol is not supplemented, then after a certain period of time, the alcohol volatilization will also be completed, then Spider-Woman Gwen will not leave the slightest trace in this world, but now that the reason is known, Leon has a way to treat the problem. It is nothing more than energy. As long as the energy is sufficient, then maintaining her stability in this world becomes simple. If she can absorb the energy of her world, then she can naturally maintain her existence in this world, but the problem now is that she can't absorb the energy of her original world, because after all, there are two worlds, and the thing involved in this is that he has no clue now. But Leon can use the energy of this world to maintain her existence, and if you want energy, it is very simple. Without him, the arc reactor can be used. The arc reactor has already been built by him as a basic structure, and what is missing now is only the elements that make up the reactor, and this element would have made him a little embarrassed if it was placed in the past, but now it is very simple. The elements needed to run the arc reactor are not the matter existing on Earth, but the new elements combined by Tony Stark's father, Howard Stark, from the inspiration of the cosmic cube, and this new element, Leon can now completely get out, because he already has 2 fragments of space gems in his hand. He came to the laboratory and immediately found the architecture of the arc reactor, and he needed to miniaturize this thing, so he began to modify it. This laboratory was built at great cost to him, with all the tools and equipment in it. and he was familiar with the design and architecture of the arc reactor, plus the knowledge he now had, and it was not a problem to modify the appearance volume. The miniaturization process of the arc reactor architecture was not difficult, and it took Leon almost 2 hours to shrink the originally large arc reactor to half a fist. Shrinking is a simple matter, but it will also reduce the energy generation of the reactor, and the energy produced by this miniaturized structure is only about 1/3 of the original energy after the ignition reaction, which is enough. The original boat reactor used new elements. Just like a normal nuclear reactor, it was necessary to add fuel, and the new fuel was a new element, but Leon will now add a space gem fragment to it on this basis. The space gem itself also contains energy without anything, which is almost endless energy that covers the entire cosmic level. And even if the gem fragment does not have nearly unlimited energy, but even if it is dispersed in equal amounts, a space gem fragment has nearly 1/20th of the energy of the universe. How vast the universe is, and how terrifying energy it has, it is simply impossible to count. Imagine using new elements to ignite the arc reactor, then putting in a space gem fragment, and then continuously absorbing the energy in it. The energy that can be produced is also an astronomical amount. In this way, it is enough for Gwen the Spider-Woman to maintain her existence in this world. Leon felt that this method worked, so he began to do it, and now the first thing he has to do is synthesize this new element. He knew very well the design and production method of the arc reactor, which naturally included the synthesis of new elements, and coincidentally, he had already prepared these materials. Next, Leon threw himself into the work at hand. At the same time as he was working, in a country in the vast starry sky and distant universe, a tragedy was being staged at this time. The splendid palace was destroyed by the light falling from the sky, the streets were full of corpses and blood everywhere, and the fire and death were intertwined to form a tragic song of life. This excess is called Asgard, and now it is suffering from attacks from the sky, countless space warships venting artillery fire over this country, and countless blows pouring down, making the entire Asgard dyed with a layer of fire and blood. The Asgardians fought back, and countless energy beams shot into the sky, destroying one warship after another. But compared to the enemy, Asgard's counterattack seemed a little weak, and they did not even know where the enemy came from. At the palace of Asgard, on the throne, Odin roared angrily with a scepter in hand, "Rebel! Loki, you actually colluded with others to attack Asgard, you are treason." Quote. Below, Loki, who was dressed in golden armor, with an evil smile on his face, stared at Odin on the throne above and said, "Father, the era of Asgard has passed, this excess will be reborn in the fires of war, in the future I will be the new king of Asgard, you are old, you don't have to manage this excess, I will send you to a paradise, you will be there for the rest of your life, believe me, it is definitely a good place. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more."